three big starting the game. It's perplexing to say it mildly. Let's play the Bill Self. Let's play the 5-minute one first, and then we'll play the 2.5-minute one. I think you have both back there, Dylan. The 5-minute one is his full post presser from last night's loss, and I just think it was. I left it in its entirety, so that way we don't get any quote. It should be last night. I think K Dog actually saved it as Utah. Yeah, it's last night's. Yeah. Because it was just, again, the full comments that he said, you can no longer take these out of context. I saw a lot of quotes going around on KU Twitter. I saw a lot of one-offs out there. And so I wanted to make sure I left this because this is one of those situations where I think we want to get the full picture here. The dire straits that is the KU basketball team in this season, this year. Again, one of those situations where I have not seen a KU team crumble like this my entire life. All right. Here is the, you have it now, Dylan? Okay. Here is Bill Self post-game.
Now, I haven't been able to figure crap out all night, but is there a reason why the microphones are pointed away? Is that the way it's supposed to be?
That's a great question, Coach. First I've ever seen it.
That's how they are? Okay. See? No wonder I couldn't get a team to guard tonight. I can't even figure this out. So, all right, have at it.
Coach, Kansas just shot 36% from the field and 28 from three. What do you think contributed to that poor shooting performance?
Well, I thought we were awful, and I thought they were great. I think BYU could have beat anybody tonight. They were great, and then we didn't do anything to make them play less than great. We shot, our offense stunk, but that wasn't it. It wasn't our offense. It was we couldn't stop them or get any momentum to stop them. I think we had one time in the first half where we cut the lead to 8. And we had 7 or 8 stops in a row, which is the only time that we actually had any success defensively the whole night. So I wouldn't say. Now, granted, their defense, they dared us to shoot, and we didn't make shots, and a lot of things. Their defense was very good. It was connected. It was sound, but it was a lot more than that contributed to the outcome of the game.
Second straight game that you guys trailed for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Second straight game where you got off to a slow start.
It's not really the second. It's been probably 4 of the last 5, something like that we've gotten off to a slow start. So we tried a different starting lineup tonight, and it wasn't who started. It was just a collection of a lot of things that led to them being good. Now, granted, it was 8-0, if I'm not mistaken, and we actually took more open shots than they took. They made theirs, and we missed our open shots. And that's life. That's basketball sometimes. But that probably had as much to do. We had Juan had a naked 3. Zeke had 2, and Nell, he made a 3 in the corner the second that sucker hit his hand in transition, and then I don't know who else made the other one, but yeah, it wasn't as much early on crap offense. It was that we didn't make our shots, and they made their shots even when we actually did an average job defensively. And I think that contributed to the bad start as much as anything.
So what can you attribute the amount of open looks they were able to get from 3, especially late in the first half?
A lot of it was probably some mistakes. When you're switching 5, you don't have to help. And we helped when we're switching 5. I mean, I'm like going, whatever. I will say this, though. They made some open shots, but I won't look forward to watching the tape. But when I do watch the tape, I'll bet you some of those shots that they made were probably not the highest percentage shots that they could get. They just made them. Now when you leave obviously Nell or Saunders open, you can bank on them making 1 or 2. But, they even shot it better than that tonight.
Coach, it was a sellout tonight. Where does the Mary Center rank in difficult places to play in the conference?
Well, we were so poor, I don't think we felt the full energy of a building that it would have been a tight game. But I love this place. I mean, it's great. It's great. It's classy. It's clean. There's a lot of good things about it. The fans are actually as close to you, in my opinion, of any place that we play in our league. You know, you look at the end zone. What is it, 12 feet? The sidelines is 2.5 feet or whatever. I mean, it's good. It's a good place. They've done a remarkable job with this place. They got really good players playing on it. So tonight, though, that's the best anybody's played against us this year, though.
What was your hope with the starting lineup that you chose?
Just try something different.
And I know you mentioned before the game that you felt like you were talked out, and you had said a lot of different things.
Yeah, I'm talked out.
When you're at that point, I mean, how tough is it to continue having to talk to your team about
Well, the thing about we need to regroup, you know, get away from each other for a day and go home and hopefully be able to, you know, a lot of times with teams, there needs to be something happen to pull everybody together that is us against the outside. And, you know, we're going to have an opportunity to do that for sure. So a lot of teams go through it. We just haven't been through it much at all in a long time. So, but certainly we're going to go through it this time. So all we have of each other, and we're going to have to be strong for each other and be good teammates and good leaders and understand that, you know, it's if we need to look in the mirror, all of us, and what can we do to change the momentum, and then whatever we commit to doing, then do it. And tonight we were 1 foot in, 1 foot out in how we guarded and a lot of other things right from the jump. I mean, it was crystal clear how we wanted to try to guard them, and right from the jump, we doubted it and ended up hurting ourselves right there early.
Again, I left the entire part, even the Mike part. He basically went along to say, I couldn't figure out anything tonight. Why start now? Couldn't figure out how the mics worked. I know he's joking. Don't know if that's grating at all to any KU fans. That almost, gee shucks. I know I wouldn't be too thrilled. But when he goes along the lines of perpetually complimenting BYU, they could have beat anyone tonight. I mean, yeah, BYU played great. But he's acting like, one, they weren't giving up open threes. And two, BYU shot 38.9% from three. It's not like they shot 50. This wasn't some ridiculous I mean, BYU played great. I'm not taking anything away. But Bill Self is acting like BYU was 20 of 30 from three, not 14 of 36, which is 38.9%. That's a good night. That's not unheard of. Teams are going to shoot 39% from three against you. That's going to happen. That's, again, why I would probably have more concerns now. BYU played great, but it wasn't unheard of. And when Bill's talking about how we missed our open shots, that's life, that's basketball, then get to the line. Don't shoot 32 threes. You shot 5 free throws. 5. Just the lack of aggressiveness has to be maddening. And then again, he finished up by saying, quote, I'm talked out. And then we need to get away from each other for a day. Dylan, the message has gotten stale, clearly, between Bill and the players. When he says we need to get away from each other for a day, how do you take that? How do you take the head coach saying we need to get away from each other for a day?
Bury the ball, that kind of stuff. Just like, flush it. It's in the can. Things like that. Coach speak. It's basically coach speak. It doesn't mean anything. It's basically just saying, hey, we need to just distance ourselves from this and move on and be positive. That's basically it.
When he says I'm talked out, the message in my mind clearly is not getting through to those guys, right?
It's like it's Mike McDaniel. Do you remember the quote that came out after the season this year?
Oh,
from the Dolphins?
Yeah.
I find these guys and nothing changes. I do all this, no one changes, culture doesn't change. It sounds like that. It sounds like I do everything I can. I've tried every coaching, motivational tactic that I can, and it ain't reaching.
Last year, in my opinion, was different because of the injury to Kevin McCullers, right?
Right. Because you could point to something
could
and
point to
say,
it.
This is it.
But this year,
There's not.
you got Kansas on your chest.
We're really just pointing to the landscape of college basketball and college sports in general.
But that's what I'm saying. What does this mean long-term
Right.
outlook?
No,
For,
I agree.
if the players aren't caring about having Kansas across their chest?
Because you can't chew them out anymore. You can't do the old school
Believe.
Saban way of coaching where we're more of a teacher as well as a coach and a father figure and
Yeah.
a disciplinarian. You don't have that anymore when you can just say, well, I don't really like the way you spoke to me, Coach, so I'm going to go play for Baylor.
So
Or I'm going to go play for North Carolina.
I'm going to talk to, again, Matt Tate and the 11. I'm going to kind of bring that up as far as the outlook of Kansas going forward and what this means with just NIL, transfer portal, recruiting. How does Bill Self get back on top? So I'm going to talk about that with Matt Tate at 11.
I think just be you. Don't try and if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. But don't try and conform and I mean I'm saying this. Don't adapt because you should adapt or die. But it's like, Jay Wright, he ain't coaching college basketball anymore. Nick Saban ain't coaching college football anymore. Some people.
So you're saying Bill Self should not coach?
No.
I'm just taking what you said.
What I'm saying is some people look at it and say, I just don't want to do this. I don't want to try and re-recruit the players I recruited this summer. Because
Sure.
that's what he's going to have to do. He literally has to re-recruit the players on this team that he wants and then also hit the recruiting trail for players next season that are freshmen. And then guess what he has to do next offseason to those freshmen?
Sure.
Re-recruit them again.
Well, a lot are going to be gone. Hunter's going to be gone. Dewan's going to be gone. KJ's going to be gone.
So you're going to have to do the transfer portal.
Zeke Mayo's a senior.
You're likely going to have to do the transfer portal again.
Again, senior doesn't really mean a whole bunch anymore because it feels like everyone gets that fifth year anyways.
Yeah,
so I know Zeke's is. I got to look and see if it's.
You almost have to
he's
go
a
to
senior.
you have to go to College Sports Reference to figure out.
Seriously, how many more years they have left? Because I think even wasn't there someone that KJ could have came back for like one more season after this, and he's.
I don't doubt it.
It's just absurd.
Anyone that was on the team during the 2020 season of any sport, I feel like has probably another year or two, maybe.
So
of
I have
rules
to
and
look
things.
back, but the point still remains: a lot of these guys will not be on the team just based of eligibility going forward. So you'll probably be looking at a completely different Kansas basketball team heading into next season. So KU fans should at least have that to look forward to. Before we take a break, I know we need to, but that final.
Got a completely different team this season, right?
You still had KJ, Dewan, Hunter. You still had the three starters. the
3
same.
of the 12.
3 starters.
Right. Okay. True.
Okay. And I think Dewan and KJ have been the ire of most Jayhawk basketball fans.
And what's
Fair or not,
What's
they've been the
and-
ire
right,
of
but-
most of their
and
fans.
They're the pillars of the team.
Yeah.
They're the. You were on the team when we did X, Y, and Z.
Well, the
You should-
growth has not happened with those guys.
Yeah.
The growth, they've been pretty much stagnant as far as their basketball potential. They've been fairly much the same guy, but their roles have gone from role players into, as you mentioned, the pillars of the organization. Before we go to break,
Wouldn't DeJuan Harris, if you were running a professional outfit, you would be kind of wanting to give him you would be wanting to give the people that have been there the longest, that have done the most, that are the team guys, that are, a assist first point guard, a guy that knows your offense, a guy that knows your culture. Those are the people that you want to pay money to. Now,
Yeah.
he's not the greatest player. He has bad games here and there. But DeJuan Harris shows up every single night and gives 100% effort and has his entire career at Kansas. And he's a national champion for it.
no, it's great, but effort gets you so far.
I'm saying we don't even have that.
Fair. Again, it's not a great roster when you have, if you have DeJuan Harris on the floor with Hunter, KJ, and Badunga, that's not a good roster. You have a pass-first guy who's now also, besides Zeke Mayo, the dude that has to shoot and score. That ain't going to work. It's not going to work.
Well, is there another fix? Is there another roster or lineup that you have that's
I would not put Badunga, KJ, and Hunter on the floor at the same time. No, I think that's absurd.
Right.
I would, again, it comes down to KJ. I appreciate KJ Adams for what he's done for Kansas, but at some point you gotta sacrifice that and try something different. I know he tried something different by inserting Badunga into the starting lineup. He's tried Shaq Moore in the starting lineup. He's tried AJ Storr or Rylan Griffin. I get all that stuff, but when you go with this defense first and you give up 91, when you go big and get out rebounded by 10, what's been the common denominator typically? It's kind of been KJ. That's my thoughts. So, do we have time to play the 2.5 minute? We'll break first. Okay, we'll break first. Sorry, Dylan's getting mad at me. Dylan says break. See? I basically am James Anderson, right? Why break?
You are James. Jason is gone. When Jason comes back, my life will be so much easier, but Jason is you. Jeez. James is you.
All right, we'll take a break, come back. There's one more clip from Bill Self I want to play. Then we'll talk a little Royals baseball on the other side of the zone. Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, folks, Jason Anderson from my friends over at Hart.
Holmes, Dylan Michaels, Jason Anderson back tomorrow. Again, we'll talk a little more KU in the 11 o'clock with Matt Tate from Wave the Wheat. Max Reaper at noon and talking Royals from Royals Review. Mick Schaefer at 1 with a little whiskey wine down and the Rotten Tomatoes game. All right, Dylan, there was one more little audio clip I wanted to play from post game from the KU game with Bill Self and Greg Gurley post game. Pretty enlightening right here. So here is after the game, Bill Self and Greg Gurley.
We're here for the Martin Bringle Bill Self post-game interview. Once again, got down early. I went into the locker room at half down 20, hit an early 3 in the second. Had a chance to dig back in, but BYU kept their foot on the gas and wins this one 91-57.
Yeah, it was awful. We're all obviously embarrassed. We didn't bring our game tonight, but I'll give them credit. They could have beat anybody in the country tonight. They were great, but we didn't put up any resistance, and certainly, we got some things we got to work through because we're going backwards right now, and it needs to change, and it's got to change on a dime. But give them credit; they were a lot better than us tonight, and we didn't guard, we didn't rebound, and obviously we didn't score the ball very well. But even us scoring the ball, that wouldn't have made a difference tonight if you don't guard. And they beat us off the bounce whenever they wanted to, and of course they shot the ball ridiculously well. But that's what they do. That's how they play. So that was disappointing to be outworked and out athletic and out skilled tonight like we were. We're not that bad a basketball team, but certainly tonight we were a bad team.
What were they doing offensively that confused us defensively?
There was nothing they did that was confusing, other than the fact we were switching ball screens. That's it. And we couldn't. We screwed that up a lot, and switching ball screens. So that was, and when we didn't switch ball screens, we weren't effective either because they were so good and so big and so long that they could get into the inside the arc and then find an open guy when we had to, guard the roll man or whatnot. So we tried to switch so that way we could eliminate that, and we still didn't even eliminate that when there's absolutely no reason to help because we're switching. Yeah, it was. And the other thing is they were so good in transition and so fast. We played on our heels the whole night. We never felt like that we were on our toes and we had them on their heels. They played downhill the whole night, and especially in transition.
We talked earlier about, hey, talking's over. Guys got to step up and make plays. What will the next couple days bring?
I don't know, Greg. We need to get away from each other. I'll tell you that point blank. I thought this would be a great opportunity to be a team bonding a situation, but it hadn't been, and it hadn't been a good trip. And guys need to get home, and we'll get home probably around 5 o'clock tonight, or in the morning, and get away from us for a day, and then let's regroup on Thursday and start looking at some things that we can do to be a more connected and a more intangible oriented team, because when we play with intangibles, that leads to playing to athleticism, which play into a toughness, which leads to playing to connectivity, a lot of things. But right now, our intangibles are not where they need to be, which leads to looking a step slow, which leads to being on an island, which leads to poor communication, which leads to a lot of different things. And certainly, we got to tighten that stuff up before we actually say, well, we're guarding something wrong, or we're not running something right. When you don't run something, when you're not connected, it's never going to look good. So we got to tighten that up first.
All right, let's get home safely and regroup and get ready for Oklahoma State on Saturday. Thanks for the time.
Okay.
Back to you, Brian.
We need to get away from each other. I'll tell you that point blank. The BYU one, he held it together. With Greg Gurley right there, felt more raw. Felt more what he's really feeling. We need to get away from each other. I'll tell you that point blank. I wonder if that's why Jason's not here. Think so, Dylan? After Radio Row, New Orleans, Jason? Was that Bill Self or is that Jason Anderson? Quote, we need to get away from each other. I'll tell you that point blank. Is that? We'll ask Mick. Is that Jason and
Jason
and
does
Nola?
do a great Bill
or is
Self
that-
impersonation, so that could, I have no idea.
Could be.
I'll have to ask K-Dog.
And we're going to regroup on Thursday. The Jayhawks are regrouping
you're
on
right.
Thursday. Jason's coming back, regrouping on Thursday. Who is it? Who said this quote? Jason Anderson or Bill Self? Could be a fun game. Might be a game we do with Mick. Could be, Dylan. Again, we'll put a bow on this for now. We'll talk a little Royals. We'll bring back with Matt Tate at 11 from Wave the Wheat. Talk some more KU, get his thoughts. But not great. Not ideal, some are saying. Royals fans. Royals fans who have Amazon Prime. The Royals will now be on Amazon Prime Video this season. So another way to watch Kansas City Royals.
All games?
What it looks like, it says live local Royals games are now available on Prime Video.
Yes.
So there you go. Another way to
As
watch
an
the Royals.
Amazonian, I get Amazon Prime free. So.
You're an Amazonian now? Is that what you're called?
I've been one.
They call it Amazonians?
Me, my boss, he's a good guy. He does things like that for us. So
Jeff Bezos?
me and Jeff are tight. So
You and because you both have bald heads, right? The
There you go.
domes, or does he have
Exactly.
hair now? Did he get the transplant? Somehow there is a correlation between getting a lot of money and your hair growing back.
it's crazy.
Yeah, look at Elon Musk.
That's crazy. Yeah.
When you have money, all of a sudden the hair grows back.
One day they'll come out for a height thing where we can make shorter people taller. So we can all.
Is that a shot at me?
No, absolutely not.
Huh?
No,
Dylan?
No, Drake's definitely not shaking his head yes, but I will.
Well, wait. Since you mentioned it, I'll bring it up. Drake's been working on some cameras behind us this entire time.
He does
just,
everything here.
Just grinding. I wasn't gonna bring you up, but Dylan did, so I had to point you out. So congratulations.
Yeah.
He just says hi, Kay. He's on a step stool
Great payoff.
back there. Yeah, that was not what I thought. I thought it'd be a lot funnier than that. That was not worth Dylan pointing him out. I would have just kept moving on and had a
He
guy.
was agreeing with me in my joke.
Yeah, that's great though. Appreciate you pointing him out and making this awkward. Thanks, Dylan. Love that.
That was my fault.
No, it's not your fault, Dylan. It's your fault. All right, ESPN had the Royals ranked 13th. 13th. Does that seem fair? That seems about on par. Here's what the quote was from ESPN, ranking the Royals 13th in baseball overall. Quote, some performance regression in KC's rotation is likely, but projection systems factor that in. Kansas City should again be an elite run prevention team and be elite at anything should keep a club in the Central race. This still has been a mildly disappointing offseason for Kansas City given the opportunity the division presents and the gaping holes the Royals have on the outfield corners. Additions could come later on, but now it looks like a missed opportunity for the Royals to bolster their odds, end quote. I think it's a pretty fair breakdown of Kansas City heading into next year. I think 13 is a little low in my opinion, but I understand where they're coming from. I think the AL Central is going to be similar to last year, but in the same regards of there's probably not going to be an elite team in the AL Central, but 3 or 4 good teams in the AL Central. You'll have the Cleveland Guardians who perpetually find ways to have a great bullpen and pitching staff who will probably outperform what they probably should do on paper. You'll have the Twins who I think will bounce back and be solid yet again. You'll have Detroit who is trying to take that next step forward, who was right there into the very end with Kansas City. And then you have the Royals. Obviously you have the dumpster fire that perpetually is the Chicago White Sox. But I think all 4 teams, at the top right there, will all be anywhere from maybe 4 80-plus win teams. I think that's a realistic possibility. So that's what we're looking at when it comes to the AL Central. But again, I don't think you're going to see this 95-plus win team anywhere in there. Does that seem fair to you, Dylan? 13th? Again, I think it's a little low, but I don't have a major argument with at least the breakdown of what they said. I think the breakdown's actually better than where the ranking is, if that's fair. Like, if you told me the Royals were 8th, 9th, 10th, that's probably more where I'd have Kansas City. But I understand the thought process of,
It's almost like power versus actual record.
yeah,
rankings.
I really like the breakdown because the same thing I've been having questions with. The regression in the KC rotation, which again, that 13th overall ranking takes into account. I love the big three of Reagans, Waka, and Lugo. But as great as they were last year, there were some underlying numbers, especially in Lugo, that maybe made you believe, is there a slight regression coming? I'm not saying he's going to have a 4.5 ERA, but will he do what he did last year? And then I think there are some question marks with Lorenzen and even Bubic as your 4 and 5. Bubic obviously trying to make that transition into the starting role yet again. We'll play that audio of one-on-one that Jack Johnson had with Chris Bubic down in Surprise a little bit later on in the show. Probably play that in the noon hour. But as solid as Michael Lorenzen was last year, he really has been fairly inconsistent year over year, plus the injury concerns that come with him. I like it again on paper, but I understand where ESPN's overarching thought process was. Defense is going to be great. We know that. No concerns defensively. But I think that ESPN had it right in their breakdown, but also I don't know what the Royals could have done differently. When they talk about mildly disappointed offseason based on the corner outfield spot. They tried to bring in Anthony Santander. They tried to go out and bring in that big middle-of-the-order bat. They did bring in Jonathan India, obviously not corner outfield spot, but they brought in a top-of-the-lineup guy. They might want to bring someone in, which they showed with Anthony Santander, but he got a much larger contract from Toronto. So what were the Royals supposed to do? Massively overpay? Or make the correct decision to say, hey, we're not going to pay for the tail end, the back end of his career. The bat pay for 2 years of production and give him 5 years.
And Toronto is going to have to pay a tax being, 1, a bad team.
Yes.
2, in Canada and Toronto with the taxes itself actually living there and playing in the United States of America. So whenever you see a Toronto signing, they almost had to go well and above what other teams were wanting and offering just to get, a yes.
Agreed. And so when ESPN broke that down, I don't have, again, an issue with what they said, but just kind of piecemealing it out and trying to parse it out. I don't think the Royals could have done a ton differently. Now, trades is the only other option for them to try and bolster that outfield spot. If you look at the free agent market, it is not great. It is not ideal. When you're looking at J.D. Martinez as your DH-only type of guy, as far as an impact bat isn't even the correct terminology for J.D. Martinez at this point in his career. That's where the free agent market is at. If the Royals try to bolster the outfield spot, it's going to have to be through a trade. We'll take a break. We'll come back. More Zone, Sports Radio 810 WHB. Welcome back at the Zone, Sports Radio 810 WHB. I don't know if you watch any of the TGL indoor leagues, those indoor golf leagues that have been going on. Tiger played in one last night and had in his own words, quote, "One of the most embarrassing moments in my golfing career just happened," end quote. So, he had 199 yards to the hole. Tiger asked to confirm the yardage, and he heard 99. A lot of times, caddies will just drop off the first number when it's obvious. Like, clearly we're not 99 yards out here, Tiger. Clearly it's 199. So what did Tiger do? Pulled out his wedge. And according to the simulator, right there in the TGL Indoor Simulator League, hit it 100 yards. Great shot, right? Needed 99, hits it 100, nails. Only issue is he's 99 yards off. His teammates, Kevin Kisner and Tom Kim, if you watch this, just dropped to the floor laughing, cackling on the floor. Then Tiger afterwards says, "I just screwed up. That was embarrassing. One of the most embarrassing moments in my golfing career just happened." Now, obviously, not as bad as if this would have been on an actual outdoor golf course. Tiger probably isn't going to pull a wedge from 199. I think his eyes will tell him differently this time around. But if you watch that, very funny. I don't know who all watches the TGL. Don't know who else gets into it. His Jupiter Lynx teammates are getting crushed. Tiger's not looking the same. Still fun to see Tiger out there, though, having fun. The career arc of Tiger, his personality showing, that's what makes this fun. Not the same Tiger obviously hitting the golf ball, but seeing his emotions, it's a pretty fun side of Tiger.
cop-out answer, but I don't think we've seen anything like this. I think on paper at the start of the season and even in the games when they were beating Duke and beating North Carolina and all that, like, they obviously looked really, really good then, and nobody thought we were going to be having this conversation on February 19th. But I think what it was always predicated on was that this group would play together, and right now they're not playing together at all. And so individually, the collection or the collection of individual pieces, each one of them looks worse as an individual player because of the component of the team basketball that's missing. And so, not only are they not a good team, but now because of the lack of confidence and the way it's all going and obviously the wins and losses and outcomes and all that, now they're not even really good as individuals either. So it's a heck of a dilemma. It's a really ugly place, and it's a place that Kansas basketball has really never found itself ever since Bill Self took over.
And I would also point out, I think last year made the argument for worst KU team. That when I asked this question before to some folks, they said, but I go, last year you had Kevin McCullers, your best player was injured. So I don't know if that's a fair comparison, at least in my opinion. But after the past two seasons,
that's the closest one, probably, right? I mean, everybody's going to point to that right away, and I'm with you. I didn't go there because I do think that injuries played such a huge part of that. I think, if he had stayed healthy and Hunter Dickinson wasn't healthy, look, I know people are really down on Hunter right now, but he was having a really good season last year and putting up numbers and working very well as the piece he needed to be with Kevin McCullough on that roster and obviously some other guys too. So yeah, I don't necessarily think that one's a complete answer because of the injury factor, just like you said.
But when it comes to at least the past two seasons in general, obviously expectations have not been met. Obviously this year they were the preseason number one, and probably the next ranking is going to come out and KU is going to be unranked, which is going to be wild to think about. But where does this leave Kansas basketball as a whole? What does this say? Again, I'm not trying to take Bill Self is the he's one of the best coaches in college basketball history. But after the past two disappointing seasons, where does this leave the KU basketball program? Clearly, it looks like it's trending down, even if the preseason always looks great. The rankings in the preseason look phenomenal, but the results have not been there. Where is the program heading right now?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think, the perspective from which you answer that is important. If you're the fans, it's the sky's falling and it's panic time and, oh, my God, we're never going to be the same. What are we going to do? What are we going to do, right? And that's how fans should feel, and I understand that, and I understand that they're frustrated, and I don't blame them. I mean, this isn't fun to watch your team. How many you said this a little bit. Well, it wasn't you that said it. Sorry, it was before I came on. But when I answered the phone, it was, hey, kind of a disappointing end to the Chiefs season. Yeah, a lot of fans were frustrated in the Super Bowl, but still, what a great season the Chiefs had, right? So fans do what fans do, even after a 17-2 season or whatever the Chiefs had, So that's understandable. But from the perspective of Bill Self or the department or the entire coaching staff or whatever, I mean, it's definitely something that you're going to have to take a long, hard look at in the off season and take inventory of what are we doing that's not working, what do we need to do that we're not doing, and then on the flip side of that, what do we need to move away from that we have been doing, and almost every one of those answers comes back to the transfer portal. You can't field a team with players that you recruit out of high school anymore. It doesn't work. There's too much talent in the portal. You need to have experience. You need to have holes filled by certain players that are now available like they never were before. So you can't just completely go away from the portal. But I do think that one of the things that this program needs to really look long and hard at is how they vet players that are available. I mean, it's everyone in the country would have loved to have A.J. Storr join them this offseason, and Kansas ended up getting him. And maybe he would have been a different player somewhere else. I think that's probably true, but at the same time, Kansas got what they got, and they ended up getting him, but he hasn't been anything near what they wanted him to be, near what they thought he would be. And so maybe, in hindsight, you look back at that and say, maybe they shouldn't have even gone after him. Maybe it just didn't fit. And so what they've done in the last couple of seasons that I think is something that will be addressed and needs to be looked at is their additions in the transfer portal have been really fast. I mean, the portal window opens, everybody's in it. You kind of just, you see the list and you see who's available, and you got to go after them if you want them, because everybody else is going after them too. So sometimes it's been, a week or less where you're on a guy and you're trying to figure out if that's who you want to bring in. It probably needs to be evaluated a little bit more than that. You probably need to take a little bit more time, and if that means you get guys later in the portal, so be it. If that means you get guys that are lesser heralded, so be it. I mean, Bill Self has shown over his career that the underdogs and the grinders and the dudes who want to put in the work and are willing to follow him and don't think they have it all figured out, sometimes they're his best players. And he loves developing that mindset and developing that type of player. So, again, you can't stay away from the portal at all. No one can. It's too real. It's too prominent. It's too important for roster construction and what everybody's doing coast to coast. But I do think they probably need to look at a different approach with it and just maybe take a little bit more time and be a little bit more cautious, whether that means you hire a sports psychologist to vet these guys or a GM to vet these guys, or you bring in a whole different part of your staff that is designed all season to just look at possible portal entries, and then when it's available and you see the list, okay, that guy's on our list, that guy's not. Okay, cool. And then you're a little more prepared as the season goes on, and maybe you're ready to hit the ground running when that window opens. But, this is just me, an amateur writer, saying, well, I am a professional writer, sorry, but an amateur mind of thinking about basketball, just kind of throwing out what they should do. I don't have the answers either. If I did, they'd put me on staff. But from the outside, I do think that's probably one of the things that's gone wrong is they just haven't hit on as many guys as they need to. And so that for my money, in any industry, anybody that would be going through something like that, you'd have to look at your process. You'd have to look at the way you're doing it and think about doing it differently.
Matt Tate is our guest right here talking some KU basketball. And 100% with you, the transfer portal is not going anywhere, but Bill Self has almost preached the same thing, game after game, and it rings true. It's effort, it's hustle. I mean, getting out-rebounded by 10 yet again, getting out-rebounded by whatever it was, 10 on the offensive glass, 16 offensive rebounds to Utah. Hustle, all of these things, not being aggressive enough, shooting 5 free throws against BYU. It's almost as if the transfer portal, the guys don't care about rocking the Kansas logo as much as it meant back when guys are getting, coming out of high school. And I think there is something to that almost leveling of the playing field where the elite organizations and colleges and schools might not mean quite as much as the NIL money that these guys are receiving. So KU is going to maybe, potentially, in my opinion, have to adjust. When it comes to DeJuan Harris and KJ Adams, that has been the ire of a lot of Kansas Jayhawk fans. I think it's a little unfair. Again, full transparency, Matt, I'm a Mizzou alum. Right. I try and be very, very unbiased in my when I talk about Kansas, because that's what we want, is unbiased here. But I've always liked DeJuan Harris. Columbia kid. I wish he would have gone to Mizzou. But he needs a lineup and, a team around him that helps him thrive. When he's taking 5 threes and he has to be one of the offensive focal points, that is not going to work. What has been your takeaway of DeJuan Harris? Maybe the lack of development in his offensive game. KJ Adams not really developing from, his entire time here at Kansas. Those guys have gotten the ire. Is that fair or unfair?
I think it's unfair. I think for one, they've both gotten a lot better. They're different players than they were when they arrived. It just so happens that their earliest days as Jayhawks were with some of the best teams Kansas has had, and so of course it's going to look better, right? When you're playing with a bunch of future pros and on a national championship team, it's going to look like you were really, really good then, and then you fell off, and I think that's where it becomes unfair. They're not above criticism. KJ Adams has taken some shots this season, and he's not an offensive-minded player, but he's taken some shots this season that I've gone, what are you doing, man? Like, what? That can't happen. You can't do that. DeJuan Harris has had some moments where, he's supposed to be this lockdown defender. He hasn't been great at that all year. He's had his moments, of course, but not like we have been led to believe or even seen in the past. And then offensively, unfortunately, he's sort of a victim of circumstance, right? I mean, because the rest of this team is not clicking offensively either, it becomes a situation where he has to be an offensive threat. And you just said it. That's not necessarily his game or what anybody really wants. He's capable. We've seen him put up 20-plus plenty of times. We've seen him knock down threes. We've seen him, I think Self said the other day, he reminded everybody, I think it was last season when we started Big 12 play, he went 8 for 8 to open Big 12 play in maybe 2.5 games, something like that. But, that the guy can shoot the ball. There's no question about it. But, again, it's not anything that any team, Kansas especially, but any team that he would be on would want him to do as sort of a primary option. So, it's like I said, they're sort of the victims of circumstance, and the circumstances are right now that they have a bunch of players around them that either don't fit the system or don't fit them or don't fit each other or all of the above. And when you get into that situation, answers become really hard to find. And I know everybody's looking for answers right now, and you have to imagine that Bill Self and his coaching staff are looking harder than any of us. But, you're limited. I mean, it's not like, I actually had a buddy of mine just text me earlier today, actually, and he was saying, I'd like to see this team just say screw it and play 4 around 1 and try to outscore everybody. I'm like, but with who? Like, who's doing the scoring? I mean, in the last couple of games alone, we've seen multiple players miss the rim with jumpers. We've seen guys hit the bottom of the rim on drives to the hoop this year. We've seen guys miss the rim altogether on layup attempts on drives to the rim and land on the other side of the backboard. I mean, this is not an offensive juggernaut. I know everyone would, and people have even quieted on this a little bit, but as of 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, everyone just wanted to see A.J. Storr and Rylan Griffin be out there and start them, play through them, let them cook, see what happens. And there's a reason that hasn't happened, and that's because those guys haven't shown the ability to do that, at least not at Kansas. So you're kind of in a situation where the answers that you're looking for are non-existent, and so you have to figure out if you can grind it out with what you know and what you do. And look, these guys, I mean, they're not being asked to do too much. I mean, I don't think KU has installed anywhere close to half of what they would normally put in offensively and defensively, for that matter. I mean, people want Self to adjust. He has adjusted. You just don't see it because they're not executing what he's put in, and then that's kept him from being able to put anything else in because they're not picking up what they've started to put in. So there's a lot of that happening, and that sounds like a lot of pointing fingers and things like that, but it really is sort of a, this is their reality, and the only way you can find it and grind through it is with, those intangible things that they're missing as much as any of it, which is, you mentioned it, effort, energy, hustle, pride, that grinded out mentality. I mean, that's the only thing that's going to get them through it. And after the last couple of games and seeing what we saw in Utah, I just don't know if these guys are wired that way, and I don't know if we're going to see that. Now, they have an opportunity. They do have 5 games left, and they've got a couple of them at home, and they've got some winnable games, and they've got some games that could give them a bunch of confidence if they could find a way to win them. But right now, it's hard to imagine they're gonna have much luck in any of that. So this is getting away from your original question about Juan and KJ, but that's kind of the reality is, those guys, as great as they are and as much as they should be remembered for, loving KU and caring and giving all they had and all that, it's just this season has really been unfortunate for them because it's sort of exposed their limitations, and they are limited players, both of them. They're really good pieces, but neither one of them is sort of a go-to guy. Neither one of them is a natural leader, and those are 2 things that KU's missing big time right now. So naturally, that a lot of the blame is going to fall on those guys. And again, I do think it's unfair. I think if you watched last night's game, you saw DeJuan Harris play his butt off. It didn't show in the stat sheet. It obviously didn't show on the outcome on the scoreboard. But from the jump, I mean, the guy was turned up and he was trying to play harder than even he normally plays. He's just not good enough to make that kind of an impact and make that big of a difference right now. And he probably never was. He was a piece who, when surrounded by other players that were really talented, looked really, really good. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, it's unfortunate that this is how it's going to kind of end for him, one way or the other, no matter what happens the rest of the season.
Yeah. Matt Tate is our guest. What is the best lineup for Kansas? To end the year, they're going to make the tournament. What is the best lineup for them? They've tried a whole bunch of pieces. They won probably the most games when Shaq Moore was actually inserted into the starting lineup. They tried last night with Badunga, KJ Adams, and Hunter Dickinson, which also getting out-rebounded by 10 when you have 3 bigs in is just ridiculous. That lineup to me makes zero sense because who's stretching the floor, especially when you have DeJuan Harrison. He was forced to shoot a whole bunch of threes. What is the best lineup in your mind for this KU team, at least for the rest of this year?
Yeah, it's a tough one because obviously none of them are working, right? And look, like one of the guys I like the most on this team in terms of his competitiveness and ability is Diggy Coit, and you just can't play Diggy a bunch of minutes. If you're doing that, you're giving up so much on the defensive end, especially because of his size or lack thereof. And he's just not a guy you brought here to play 25, 30 minutes at all, so. I think he belongs in the rotation, and I think he cares, and I think he's playing with a little bit of heart, and they need a lot of bit of heart right now. So I think he belongs in the rotation, but that's sort of the perfect explanation of why this team's so hard to figure out, because one of the few guys that's on that roster right now that does care, you can't play, and you can't play him enough anyway. So to answer your question, I mean, I think obviously – people hate it, but you have to have DeJuan and KJ out there. You just do. I mean, they're experienced. This is their team for better or worse. This is their team. They know Bill Self better than anyone, and he knows them. And so there's a little bit of continuity and reliability, and he at least isn't going to have to worry about what they're doing, right? So you have to start there. I think Rylan Griffin belongs on the floor. I think Zeke Mayo belongs on the floor. They can both shoot, and that's what this team's missing a ton of. Is obviously they didn't make shots last night, and that's one of the things. They didn't look great last night, but man, even when it was, a 10, 12 point game in the first half, they would run good offense occasionally. They would get the ball where it needs to go. It would get to Rylan Griffin on the wing. He'd have an open look. You got to knock that down, and he just missed. And so, if you're not making shots, it becomes really, really hard no matter who's out there. But I think that Rylan Griffin, lengthwise, athleticism and shot making, I mean, he gives them a chance. If there's one guy that I would sort of uncork the rest of the way, it would probably be him. Like, tell him not to think, tell him not to worry, tell him he's going to play 30 minutes and just let him go and see what happens and live with whatever mistakes he makes on defense and just see if you can't get him going as more of a weapon on offense, because you need that help massively right now. So Zeke and Zeke's been there, but in a lot of ways their best player all year. So I don't think you can take him off the floor at all. So DeJuan, Zeke, Rylan Griffin, KJ Adams, and I know people hate it, but I think Hunter Dickinson's got to be out there too, because I think if he's playing with 4 guys that are clicking, Hunter offers a lot. For one, he's a double-double, even though it's a lot of times an empty-looking stat line. It is an automatic double-double, and he's a presence on both ends. And on top of that, man, he has range, he has versatility, and I think he still has a really good knack to be a good passer, and that could help this offense too. So I would love to say Flory's the answer, but I think in the last 2 or 3 weeks we've seen Flory Badunga look a lot like a freshman, and he had a really good stretch where he filled in for KJ when KJ was hurt, and good for Flory. I mean, it looked like he was about to break out, and then it just never went from there, and that's what happens with freshmen, and that's why you can't rely on them, and it's hard to count on them to be sort of the focal point of anything. So unless you're talking about a guy like, Darren Peterson, who's coming in next year, who they're really excited about, obviously, and guys we've seen in the past too. But a freshman big's a different story, I think. So, that's probably the lineup I would go with. I mean, if you forced me to sit Hunter and play Flory, I wouldn't fight you. I would say, okay, let's try that, see what happens. But I think that's a good enough lineup. I really do. I mean, I think chemistry is a concern across the board and up and down the roster. I think that's something they've got to get fixed. And then I think they've got to find some guys that have some pride in not only competing and playing hard and delivering and all that, but actually getting it done, like making the open shots and finding a way to get that stop they need to get. I mean, you know, Bill Self can coach until he's blue in the face on those things, and he can tell them, this is what you need to do, and this is what you have to do, and this is what I demand, and this is how it's going to go, and this is how you're going to do it. I mean, he can be a dictator of sorts in that regard, but until those guys actually do it on the floor, you know, no matter what coaching he's given them, it really isn't going to matter. So it has to come down to that. It has to come down to these guys care. They're embarrassed. They have a little pride, and they decide that enough is enough, and they go out and they figure out a way to make it happen. That's
Matt,
not – yeah, go ahead.
No, I kind of want to go along with what you were saying right there, because Bill Self's comments is what I want to get into here, because he said, quote, last night, "It was awful. We were embarrassed. We are going backwards." He also said, quote, "We need to get away from each other. I'll tell you that point blank." He talked about getting away from each other twice. He did it once post-game at the actual BYU presser, and then he came on with Greg Gurley, and the tone was a little different there, right? Against BYU, he did the normal one with all the media there. It was more, I don't want to say jovial, but more joking, right? He has a little bit more of the aw shucks, that sort of mindset. And then when he was talking with Greg Gurley, it was pretty much, we do need to get away from each other. I'll tell you that point blank. It was more, this is a head coach who is very irritated. What did you take away from his post-game comments?
Yeah, I think he's irritated. I think he's at a loss for words. I think he's exhausted. I don't think this is something he's used to at all. I don't think that means everything he's ever tried has worked the first time or even the second time. But I think he's always been surrounded by guys who have at least had the shared mindset that he has of, if it ain't working, we're going to figure it out. And I don't think this team has that. And I think that's frustrating the heck out of him. And then you've got tiers within the team of that being the same issue, right? Like KJ and DeJuan are KU through and through. They've been here. They've played with some of the greats. They've won a title together. They've been here, and they know what it's supposed to look like, and they're willing to say, hey, Coach, if you want us to play blindfolded with our hands tied behind our back and run backwards, we will. If that's what you think will win, we'll do that. And then there's another tier there, and I don't know who else is in these tiers. I haven't really thought about it that way, and I don't even know if it matters. The fact that the tiers exist is what matters. But then there's another tier that's like, man, maybe I'll listen a little bit, and yeah, I could try that, but I don't necessarily agree with that, so I don't know why we're doing that. And then there's another tier that says, man, I don't know. I don't care. It's not working, and I'm over it. And then there's maybe even another tier that says, well, it doesn't matter what I think anyway. I'm here to play out the season, and then I don't know what's coming after that, right? So there might even be another tier or two in there that I didn't kind of name right there. But I think that when you are that divided, it's not just that Bill Self's frustrated. It's that he's frustrated. He can't really seem to get through to these guys, and that these guys on that team can't even really seem to get through to each other. There's always been sort of that. I mean, sometimes some of the best teams have come together because of like I would imagine the Bobby Knight teams at Indiana back in the day. Those guys probably played together and were so tight because they hated him. I know they loved him too, and they went to play for him, and they knew what they were getting into. But when Bobby Knight was on one of his freaking kicks, and no pun intended there, but when he's really giving it to them, and they're over it, and they're tired of hearing him yell and cuss at him and whatever, they go into the locker room and they bond over that. Man, screw that guy. Let's show him. And they came together as a result of that. Maybe that didn't happen in Indiana. I don't know, but that happens all the time. All different sports, and sometimes that's a good thing for a team. And I don't even think Kansas has the benefit of having that happening right now, right? Because these guys are just not, seemingly at least, not on the same page. Self has said all year that their attitudes are good. You got to take that at face value. If he says they're good, then they're good. But also we all know he doesn't always 100% say what he means or say the truth or anything like that. Sometimes you just give that coach speak, and that's what it is. So for my money, man, there's definitely a chemistry issue there, and I don't think it's just one or two players that don't like this guy or that guy. I don't. That seems kind of simple to me. I don't know that it's even that exactly. I think it's more of a tiers of commitment, and the coach is frustrated because he can't get through to them. The players aren't jiving on how they need to be heard or seen or approached or reached or whatever it is. And when that's the case, it's really hard to see anything get better. It really is.
Yeah. Matt Tate is our guest. Final question for you here, Matt. What seed does KU end up with, and how far do they go in the tournament?
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so they've got 5 games left. They play Saturday against Oklahoma State at home. I think they're going to win that game. I think it'll look a lot like the Colorado game. I don't think it's going to be pretty. I don't think they're going to play great, but I think, they're better. They should have more talent, and they should win at home. So there's one. I think they're going to lose at Colorado next Monday.
Wow.
Yeah, I just, that one seems to me like it's got a real danger button written all over it. I mean, Self said after the Colorado game here, and he was smiling about it. He liked it, because Colorado was overmatched here, but they competed, and I don't remember what the score was, but it was a 12-point game or something. He said one of those guys from the CU team in the handshake line afterwards says, "We'll see you in 2 weeks." And Self loves that. I mean, Self would take that guy on his team right now if he could, right? So they're going to be ready, and that place will be sold out. And Colorado did get a win. Granted, it was against UCF, not the most talented team in the conference either, but they're starting to show signs of life a little bit, maybe. So just based on the fact that KU's in such a rough spot right now, and the fact that the road has been so unkind to them, I think it's really hard to say that that's a win. So I think that's a loss. I think they've got a shot to beat Texas Tech at home because it's at home. They're probably not better than Tech, but because it's at home, they got a shot. After that, though, at Houston's a loss, and then Arizona's too good. I mean, I know that'll be senior day, and crazy things happen in Allen Fieldhouse on senior day, but that's hard to imagine. So I say 2 and 3 the rest of the way. So, what they are today is probably a 6 or a 7 even, maybe a 6 today. But if you throw 3 more losses on top of that, and even the wins aren't necessarily quality wins at that point, Oklahoma State's not moving the needle, right? So, I think a 7 or 8 is very realistic and very possible right now. And if they're an 8 seed, that'll be wild. We've seen it though, not at Kansas necessarily, and certainly not under Self. But we've started to see that. Like, I remember not that long ago, Michigan State was in the 8-9 game and played Kansas in round 2. North Carolina was in the 8-9 game and played Kansas in round 2. Connecticut's been in that game long before Hurley got there. But some of these blue blood type programs that have been the best of the best are starting to find their way into that 8-9 game. And I think that's because college basketball is getting harder and the tournament's getting harder. So it would be wild, and it would be, people around here would be devastated, and just, it would be so uninspiring and so ugly for people to have to watch KU be an 8 or a 9 seed, right? Like, nobody wants that. But if they don't win but one of these games, I think that's where they're headed. Now, if they win 2 or 3 of them, I think they can easily stay in that 6-7 range. If they win more than that, then, yeah, they could probably still be a 5. But like you said a little while ago, they're definitely going in the wrong direction. Self said it himself that they're going backwards, and at least right now, it's really hard to envision there being anything that, in such a short period of time, snap your fingers kind of stuff, gets it turned around that quickly, right? Like, if they still had 2 or 3 months of season left, I would think everybody would say, they'll figure it out. They'll still be a top 4 seed. They've got some good wins. Their net ranking's good, all that. But they're running out of time. And so I think the reality is they are who they are. And there's not a ton of time to change that. And they're going to have to figure it out mentally as much as anything to have any hope of getting this thing turned around.
Matt Tate from Wave the Week. Make sure you follow him on the X at MCTAIT. That is at MC Tate. Matt, really appreciate it, man. Great insight.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me. It's I know it sucks for the fans because nobody enjoys watching their team struggle like this, but it's one of those rare years where the perspective of someone who covers it, it's interesting. You know, it really is, because there's a lot to figure out. There's a lot of questions, and most years covering Bill Self's teams, it's been pretty cut and dry. They're pretty damn good, and no one can really touch them, and we know why they're good. This year we got a lot of questions, and they keep coming. So it'll be a really interesting few weeks here as we grind toward March, and you know, anybody's guess is on the table right now as to what can happen. So anyway, we'll talk again if you want. Have me anytime, call me anytime, and I'm sure we'll get into it a little more. But appreciate you having me today.
Of course, we'll take a break. We'll come back more right here on The Zone, Sports Radio 810 WHB. joins us in the one. Gonna have some fun with Mick Schaefer. We'll have fun with Max Reaper too, but we'll more nonsense with Mick Schaefer because that is what he wants to do. And what I want to do with him. It'll be fun. All right. Missouri plays Alabama tonight at Mizzou in Columbia. Number 4, Bama. Number 15, Missouri. Missouri, nice 2-game win streak last week. Have played every team pretty much close. The only game they really didn't play close was the Auburn game. Auburn just beat Alabama. 2 of the higher scoring teams in all of college basketball. Alabama, 90.3 points per game. Missouri is 19th overall in college basketball, 82.6. Dylan, you want to take a little gander or guess at what the over-under is for tonight's game?
Mizzou, Bama?
Yeah. College basketball.
I'm going to go 140.
Come on. You're
The
better.
over-under for both teams?
Yeah, no, for one team.
I'm saying 140.
What is this, Sacramento Kings? 171.5. The over-under in a college basketball game between 2 SEC teams is 171.5.
So no defense then?
Defense is played by both teams.
It's optional.
Mostly Mizzou. No, offense is that good.
At a 170 over-under?
Offense is
Both
that good.
teams are going to drop 90. We're playing defense out there?
Mizzou plays defense. They're 5th in college basketball in steals. But what they're basically saying is it is a lot of pressure, quick shots. They don't let the shot clock get down to 3, 4. It's not Virginia. It's not that style of ball.
Thank God.
Tonight, if you want to watch college basketball and want to watch a great game, hopefully, please be a
Yes,
good
I
game.
know. I was
Alabama,
doing the same
Mizzou.
thing. I don't want to jinx it because I do agree. I cannot wait to watch this game, and part of me believes that actual feeling will curse it
I know.
into the 140 over-under range that I gave.
Yeah, that'd be brutal. By the way, I am shocked. I am thrilled. I am nervous. Missouri is a 1.5 favorite.
At home?
It's at home, I know.
No.
But,
they don't do that 3-point garbage.
How far has
basketball.
Missouri come from last year? I know we've talked about it all year long, but how far they have come from not winning a single SEC game to being a 1.5 favorite against the number 4 team in the nation?
That would make me nervous.
I'm nervous.
That would make me nervous.
I'm nervous.
If I was a Mizzou fan, I wouldn't like that.
Bet on Bama for the emotional hedge. That way, it's a win-win. Either my pocket gets better or gets bigger, or my heart gets bigger because Missouri won. The emotional hedge is the hedge for me. All right, we're going to talk some baseball. We'll talk a lot of Mizzou tomorrow. Either way, I want to talk a lot of Mizzou tomorrow with Jason when Jason's back. But baseball time, Jack has done a great job down there in Surprise, Arizona. And one of the biggest question marks I have, not in a negative way, just overall based on injury and because this guy was so good out of the bullpen, is Chris Bubich. Jack Johnson had a chance to talk with Chris Bubich one-on-one down there in Surprise and get his thoughts. And obviously, he's trying to make the transition back into a starter from starter to bullpen piece, now trying to make it back as a starter. Here is Jack Johnson with Chris Bubich.
Down here in Surprise, Arizona with Chris Bubich. Chris, I know a lot of people have been wondering, that switch going from the bullpen to the rotation or actually starting in the rotation, going to the bullpen. Let's go there first. You come off Tommy John, middle of the season you join, and you find rhythm in the setup role. What was that like for you? When did you know that that was kind of going to be the role you were taking on last year?
Yeah, I think towards the end of my rehab assignment, I started my rehab assignment in, it was about mid-May. We extended it beyond the 30 days because you can do that with guys coming back from Tommy John. So it was just to buy me a little more time to build up, feel comfortable. And then, the last couple of weeks of the rehab assignment, we decided, hey, what do you think about making a switch to the bullpen? It's a good way to manage your workload coming off the injury, and we could find a role for you down there. So what I think was meant as more of probably a multi-inning role, kind of a long relief role in the beginning, kind of turned into more high leverage opportunities as our starters were so often pitching deep into games. So that multi-inning role probably wasn't needed that much. It's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
But no, I had a lot of fun with it. I've had some experience relieving in the big leagues before, but nothing quite to that caliber of pitching those high leverage opportunities, getting to pitch in the playoffs and in big moments. And, it's something I'll never forget. And, there's definitely a different type of adrenaline that comes with that. Not to say you don't get that, in a starting role, but I think you just naturally pace yourself a little bit more because you expected to pitch longer, more pitches, more innings, all the above. So when you come in for an inning or so, it's fun to just grip and rip.
Coming into camp now, stretched out a little bit more, trying to go back into the rotation. How do you handle that in the off season? When you find out, hey, I'm no longer going to be in that one inning role, or at least I'm going to try to get back in the rotation, get stretched out. How do you work on that? Without having any games to do it in.
Yeah, I think it just starts early in the off season. First and foremost, just making sure you're healthy, and I think. The way I finished the year, I felt really good. I felt my elbow was in a good spot. Everything else with the body was in a good spot. So that's step number one. And then from there, I think just building the foundation of, I did a lot of volume early in the off season, but at a lower intensity to kind of build that base, build that foundation of, okay, I'm going to probably expect to make, quite a few more throws this year, quite a few more pitches and innings and whatnot. So that started for me. I started throwing again about mid-November, so about a month off. Work that into, for about a month and a half, 2 month stretch until you get back off the mound again. But I think just controlling the intensity, like I said, early on is really important because, if I'm expected to throw, let's say, a lot more innings this year, obviously in a starting capacity or even in a long relief capacity, wherever it may be, I don't want to do too much too early to where, I get to the middle of the season and, I'm really out of gas, essentially. So I think just pacing myself properly, kind of understanding, like I said, building that high volume but lower intensity early on. And now that we're in camp, ready to go in games here in a few days, I think now is the time to gradually build and step on it. And naturally there'll be some more adrenaline, so I'll want to step on it, but still realizing that it's a long season and, we want to play into October.
And last one for you. Has this offseason been about more so just focusing on getting stretched out, making sure you're ready to start? Have you worked on any new pitches, or has it more so been just refining those pitches that were working so well for you last season?
Yeah, I think all the above. I think the main two of, like you said, building up, just establishing that base, making sure I'm healthy coming into camp because, last year obviously I wasn't really participating in spring training with the rehab process. The year before, that's actually when I went down, so started to feel some aches and pains kind of during that spring, and then the year before that we had the lockout and everything. So it's been kind of a weird ride, especially I guess in my case of spring training innings, I guess, if you want to call it. But so just building the foundation. This is one of the first spring trainings I really feel that I could pitch healthy the whole 6 weeks or 7 weeks, however long it is. And then from there, adding a little bit of it's like a gyro slider, like a smaller slider, just because my slider is a little bit bigger, essentially slurvy at times, which it worked really well. Great to limit contact, but I think this one will help be a little more platoon neutral, righties, lefties. It just works probably a little bit better off the vertical fastball I have. So we'll see how it goes. I'm not saying I'm going to go out there and throw it 40% of the time.
I like that. Chris Bubich learning a new pitch, the gyro slider. Again, looking like he's going to try and take over that fifth spot in the rotation. Lorenzen, number 4. Great year last year at the bullpen, trying to get back to being a starter, trying to pace himself, but again, trying to learn a new pitch, the gyro slider to play off more of that slurvy slider that he currently has. We'll take a break. We'll come back. More Zone next. Sports Radio 810 WHB. getting ripped on by Zach from Sales after our heated Fact or Fiction game yesterday, his first time. He immediately comes up to me and goes, yeah, great call on that KU one. Give me another point. Not the game, Zach. Not my fault. Blame Kansas, not me. It's what I thought, what I felt in the moment. I was wrong, you were right, but you're not getting that point, Zach. No, no, no. Max Reaper coming up next from Royals Review. We're going to talk about MJ's new swing, the Cole Reagan's move as far as extension, question marks, the outlook of the AL Central, and is the outfield bats going to be the thing that holds this team back? Max Reaper next. 10 WHB, Sterling Holmes, Dylan Michaels, Jason Anderson back tomorrow. Joined now by Max Reaper from Royals Review. Max, how you doing?
Sterling, I'm cold. I wish I was in Arizona right now, but I'm happy to talk about baseball and see footage of my favorite Royals stretching and playing catch in the warm sun of Arizona.
Well, they're all in their best shape of their life. Every single one. Even if you're injured, you're still in the best shape of your life. It's incredible how that happens.
Spring is a time for optimism, man. So, yeah, I wish I was also in the best shape of my life, but I guess we'll have to reserve that for our favorite Royals players.
Dog, I'm convinced that if I went to spring training, I then would be in the best shape of my life. I could be 12 beers deep and eat only, Taco Bell, and somehow I would still be in the best shape of my life according to spring training metrics. But here we are. There's actually a lot of things I want to get into with you, Max. It's been a fun off season, even if some of the more hopeful moves as far as the outfield bats have not transpired. But I think one of the more exciting aspects does come in the outfield, and your excitement level all depends on the person. I am more reserved, but I've seen a lot of people getting excited about MJ Melendez and his new retooled swing. And I understand why. He has taken out so much darn movement. It's insane. It looks like a completely different person swinging the bat. How excited should we get about MJ's new swing?
Yeah, I think, the guys working on new pitches or tinkering with their swing, that's kind of adjacent to best shape of his life stories when it comes to spring training, what's coming out of spring training. So, I think I understand if there's some skepticism. I mean, like, this is batting practice. We're just seeing the start of a retooled swing. We haven't seen how he's fared against major league pitching yet. So then we'll see how it carries over into the regular season. But I mean, what you said, like the movement is quieted a lot. I think all of us that have watched MJ Melendez over the last couple of years have seen that swing and just kind of we shake our head and say, man, there's a lot of action going on before that swing that is kind of causing him to jerk his head, pop up anything on the outside of the plate, not really square up on those pitches down the middle. And, if anyone could get him to quiet that swing, have a shorter compact stroke, he could really tap into some of that power that caused him to hit like 40 home runs in a minor league season a couple years ago. And the early look at his swing so far in spring training, yeah, it's just spring training, but it does look like a much more compact swing. His bat, instead of standing perpendicular up and down, is now kind of more on his shoulder now, which I think gives him a better bat swing path. His stance is not as open as it was last year, so I think he's going to have a little bit better coverage on the outside of that plate. And he just seems like there's a lot less going on than last year. So allowing him to kind of get behind those pitches and really drive the ball. And I don't know if you've heard the audio, but it sounded pretty good too. So we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic, as I think many Royals fans are, but certainly you like the fact that he's willing to make changes. And I get the sense that, I know some Royals fans weren't, terribly crazy about the idea of MJ Melendez coming back and starting in this outfield, but he's still a young guy. And I do feel like this is kind of his make or break year, that the Royals aren't going to give him a particularly long leash, that he kind of has to produce. And where they are in the success cycle, like they need guys to perform or else they're not going to start every day. So I think there's some optimism that he can be that player. Man, if he can turn things on and not even be like a 40 home run guy, but just be a solid 20 to 25 home run guy with a good on base percentage, that's going to be huge for this lineup because they really need to lengthen that lineup and get some additional run producers in the middle of that order.
Yeah. One of my favorite talking points and questions I have just the entire offseason and kind of how the organizational shift has transpired is, does Bobby Witt Jr. being great and being that MVP caliber player take a lot of pressure off of the young guys? Because now no longer does like Jack Caglione have to come up and be the guy. You already have the guy here. When it was Eric Hosmer and Mike Moustakas and a lot of these young guys, hell, Alex Gordon even when he first came up, right? Alex Gordon's the next George Brett. All of this stuff, that is so much pressure on a young guy, and you can't just be great. You have to be incredible. You just can't be good. You have to be the next, superstar. You have to be the savior of this team. Well, with Bobby already being basically the savior of this team, does that take a lot of pressure off of these young guys to have to come up and immediately produce, which in turn allows them to produce earlier on in their MLB career?
I mean, I think it can. I certainly, I think Bobby is the kind of guy, and I think this comes from being the son of a former major leaguer, but he just seems to really relish that spotlight. If anything, like he really absorbs that, and that allows guys to kind of take some of the pressure off. You know, I going into the postseason last year, I did wonder, like, man, this is Bobby's first postseason trip, and like, you know, there's going to be some pressure because this franchise hasn't had success in a while. You know, how's he going to handle it? And he seemed to handle it just great. I mean, he really rose to the occasion. I know, you know, he had some big hits in the Baltimore series. I know he didn't always come through in the New York series, but you know, I think it was a pretty good test of his of his mettle and what he's capable of, and I think he did a really good job. So, you know, I think that's going to carry over to this year, and yeah, that allows other guys to maybe develop a little bit. On the other hand, you know, the Angels had Mike Trout and a bunch of stiffs for a long time. You know, you kind of, you know, just one guy. You know, you can't just rely on one guy to kind of carry this lineup all the way through. He only bats, you know, 4 maybe 5 times a game, and so you do need other guys to step up and kind of perform. And that's not a bad thing. Like, you need some pressure, right? You want some guys to feel a little bit of pressure. And I think the team being a contender now and having raised expectations, I think will create a little of that pressure to kind of say, hey, we're not going to sit around and wait, you know, for 1,000 plate appearances necessarily for you to figure things out. You kind of have to perform because we need to win this year. We only have so many years with Bobby Witt Jr., you know, and thankfully he has a long-term contract, but there's still a finite term to that. Let's not waste his prime years figuring out, you know, who's going to be our left fielder, figuring out who's going to be in our starting rotation. We need guys who we can depend on because you don't want to look back at the end of Bobby Witt's contract and say, wow, we made the playoffs, you know, that one year against the Yankees, but we really didn't do much else. You know, you can't squander those opportunities. I mean, look, you know, the Chiefs, some of those reports are coming out after the Super Bowl about all the pressure the coaches felt, you know, having Mahomes on the team, you know, it should take pressure off him, but they don't want to let him down, right? You don't want to let Bobby Witt Jr. down either. You want to perform and make sure you're supporting him and giving him what he needs to succeed. And so I think some of that pressure will be good for some of these younger players. It's maybe a different kind of pressure than you're talking about, but I think it's a good pressure to have, especially when you're a team that wants to win games.
Max Reaper is our guest. The Athletic grades the Royals offseason as a C. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's so many different reactions to this offseason. I think it's kind of based a little bit on expectations. Like I said, like if you had asked me like 2 years ago, like, oh, the Royals are going to acquire Jonathan India, great on base hitter, you know, was like top 10 in walks last year, you know, solid performer. They're going to bring back Michael Walker at a pretty reasonable deal, very solid, one of the top 25 pitchers in the American League last year. They're going to add Carlos Estevez, you know, an all-star reliever who's very solid last year. I would have said, wow, that's a terrific offseason. And yet I think the expectations were a little bit higher this year because they have that glaring hole in the lineup where they need a run producer, and the outfield was pretty abysmal last year. Offensively, all 3 outfielder positions were pretty weak. And so the fact that they weren't able to do anything on that front, I think, is a big reason for the letdown. Because people, I think, feel like this team is like maybe one piece away from being like perhaps the division favorite. You know, like if we had acquired a solid not even a great left fielder, but a solid run producer that can play left field every day or right field every day, that would have put us like, you know, in great position to be the favorite. And we didn't do that. And then look, there's still time. You know, there are deals that get made in spring training. I think the team is certainly looking for opportunities to upgrade in the outfield. But, you know, you look at the free agent market, it was probably more than they wanted to pay for a guy like Anthony Santander or Teoscar Hernandez or Jurickson Profar. The trade market has been a little slower than I think people expected. Certainly didn't see many bats, change teams this offseason. So I think the will is there. I just don't think they were able to get a deal done. And look, maybe they do in spring training, maybe they do in the middle of the season. But the fact they weren't able to do that is a bit of a letdown. I think C is a little too harsh. I would have given them a solid B, maybe a B minus. But I think you look at what they were able to accomplish, and that they were able to upgrade this team even without adding that middle of the order bat.
So, and I'm with you. I think probably about a B is where I'd land overall. But I understand the concern with the lack of the outfield bat. And here's some numbers from last year that kind of paint the picture. Left field OPS was 636. Center field OPS was 642. right field OPS was 666. It was just brutal production from all three outfield spots. Now, obviously, center field gets somewhat of a break. That was mostly Kyle Isbell, who plays elite defense, right? So that's at least slightly understandable. But the corner outfield spots, OPS in those numbers is brutal. Now, I will also point out, though, to give the Royals some credit, the leadoff spot last year, the OPS was 604. I'm letting that sit in because the OPS last year for the leadoff spot was 604 on base of 270. That was the worst of any spot by far of any other batting order spot in the entire Royals lineup. So the fact that the Royals got Jonathan India, they fixed one of the, if not the biggest major issue they had. That is big. But I also want to kind of point out, Max, that the Royals went after a guy like Anthony Santander, but they just weren't going to overpay and give him 5 years like Toronto did. So to me, it wasn't like the Royals didn't try to go out and get a corner outfield bat. They just weren't going to overpay. They were competitive, but they were also smart about it. It takes two to tango. It wasn't like they were trying to overpay for a good bat who you're paying 5 years when you're probably only going to get 2, maybe 3 years of good production. I couldn't find the fault with what the Royals really did.
Yeah, I think it takes two to tango, right? You need a free agent that's willing to come here at the price you want to pay him, and they just couldn't find that. And for trades, you need to find a team that's willing to give up a player that you want and accept the package you're going to give in return. And so, I can't blame them too much. I look back at the offseason. I don't see a move that another team made that I'm like, oh yeah, the Royals definitely should have been in on that. Like, a lot of these guys that signed deals, I'm like, yeah, that team overpaid, or that team overpaid to acquire that player. So, like I said, I think there's a will there, and maybe we'll see a deal get done. I think a trade is much more likely, especially now that there's not much left on the free agent market. I think trade's always been kind of the avenue they've wanted to take, but there just haven't been many players available. Now that could change as there's guys emerge in camp, and maybe a left fielder becomes expendable. I think Taylor Ward at the Angels is a guy that I'm like, is he going to get traded or not? Because I don't know what the Angels are doing at this point. Like, are they trying to contend with their roster? It doesn't seem like they should. Maybe he's a guy that becomes available, but there hasn't been a whole lot of action on the trade front around baseball. A lot of that's teams sitting on their hands, and so maybe an opportunity comes up in the next few weeks. Maybe it'll open up later this year. But I think the Royals are going to be active trying to upgrade this lineup and to improve the team.
So outside of Taylor Ward, who I think everyone is, that's been the name thrown around for a while now, a name or two that you think is a realistic possibility that the Royals could go after in a trade?
That's a good question. I mean, Jesus Sanchez is another guy for the Marlins. They've had a pretty much a fire sale the last year. The new GM there used to be at the Rays, so certainly used to the roster churn. And Sanchez is kind of like the last guy who has, a significant major league experience and is a decent player. He's not great, but he gives you some speed, can play left field, decent hitter, has some power. I don't think he's ideal. He's certainly not a great on base guy, but he would be an option out there. And I don't get the sense it would take a ton to get him. I know the Angels reportedly were asking a lot for like a Taylor Ward, who's been a solid 20 home run guy. I don't think Sanchez is that kind of player, and I don't think it would take as much to get him. But he could become available if they maybe get a little desperate. I still look at the Cardinals. I'm like, they've got a glut of kind of outfielders, and I don't know what direction they're going on. They're the only team that hasn't signed a single major league free agent this offseason. They seem to be trying to cut costs and try to go in a younger direction. And you look at that team, you're like, wow, Lars Nootbaar would be really nice on the Royals roster. Another guy that can get on base a lot, play left field for you. Even a guy like Alec Burleson might be an interesting option out there. I don't know if Nolan Arenado and the saga with him is kind of holding up their moves, but I look at that outfield and I think, well, there's some options that could help the Royals as well. So I don't know. There are definitely some guys out there, but whether or not the teams are willing to trade them remains to be seen. Oh, Luis Roberts, another junior for the White Sox, another one who I think I wrote about a couple weeks ago. He's got a $15 million contract this year, some flexible club options after that. Certainly has high upside. but also a lot of injury risk. And, there's been some concerns about his motor, like how much is he willing to hustle out there. So he's another option as well if the Royals feel like he's worth the risk. And certainly they're in a position right now where some of these risks are worth taking, right? If he is a 5 wins above replacement player and can play great left field for you and be a middle of the order of the bat, and you're not even paying him like $15 million is a lot, but it's not, certainly within their budget, and for one more year they could actually, they could easily do that. Then that makes some sense, but they'll have to determine whether that's a good fit for them. I think J.J. Piccolo has talked a lot about the right player. They want to add the right player to the roster, and I don't know if Robert is going to really fit that model.
And I believe the White Sox are still asking for a ridiculous return for a guy who really has only had one great year. Yes, it was phenomenal. You're right, 5 wins above replacement in 2023, but that almost at this point in his career is looking like the outlier. Would love to see him here in Kansas City, but again, it just comes down to the White Sox and what they're asking. I think Jesus Sanchez is a name that you brought up earlier on with the Marlins, which would be intriguing. He's also a left-handed bat. He is 27 years old. The baseball savant page has a lot of red in it. I think that might be a name that the Royals would behoove themselves to go after, who wouldn't cost a lot to bring in. So I like that one there. Again, we're joined right now by Max Reaper of Royals Review. One name that's currently on the team that I think has been intriguing is Joey Wiemer from the Reds that came back in that Jonathan India, Brady Singer trade, kind of the under-the-radar player. What about Joey? Any chance that he could be an impact player, or at least a platoon player for this Royals team?
Yeah, when you talk about maybe taking some pressure off guys, if Weimer gets acquired by the Royals 5 years ago, like they're throwing him out in center field and starting him every day and saying, okay, let's see what you can do, right? Because they were so desperate for talent at that point. Well, now they're in a position where they can ease him in there, platoon him, with Melendez and left, get him in, situations where he has in a position to succeed a little bit. And he's got some intriguing talent. I mean, he's got a pretty solid pop in his bat, and he has a pretty good speed out there as well. His problem, of course, is just making enough contact to make sure to make that worthwhile. But if he's asked to kind of play in spot situations where he can succeed, I think there's an opportunity the Royals can get some real value out of that. And so, yeah, I think there's a very underrated part of that trade, getting another high upside bat that this guy was a former top 100 prospect at one point. Certainly hasn't worked out so far, but still young enough that you can see some potential out of him. So, the hitting coach development team, I think, will have a work cut out for them. Certainly, they're working with Melendez, but Weimer is another one that could be really intriguing if he figures it out.
Yeah. Fifth spot in the rotation. Who's a go-to? Right now, it looks like Lorenzen's the fourth spot. Chris Bubic is the fifth. One, I guess, do you think that's a smart move for the Royals, trying to get Chris Bubic back to be a starter when he was so good as a setup man last year? But also it kind of comes down to who's that fifth guy going to be if it's not Bubic. Alec Marsh has the shoulder. Kyle Wright's still trying to find his way back. Daniel Lynch is really the only other possibility, and he's looking more and more like a bullpen piece, although he looks like he was tabbed to start the first spring training game, so they have that. But what's your takeaway and thought process on Chris Bubic in that fifth spot in the rotation?
Well, my first thought is that whoever doesn't get it could be the trade bait needed to, acquire an outfielder if someone does become available this spring, because it's kind of a nice problem to have where they have a couple different legitimate options, right? And they'll probably need all these guys at some point. So, maybe you don't want to trade from your depth in case you need all these starting pitchers. But, I think Alec Marsh probably has the inside track. He's got a little bit of an injury setback to start. But I think he's the one that, even with his inconsistencies last year, kind of had the more proven track record throughout the year. Now, they did pull him from the rotation late last year, which maybe signals, some concerns about his ability as a starter. And I think he could be like a really effective reliever if they decide to put him in the bullpen. So I'm I think he's one of the guys I'm really looking at how he performs this spring to see, like, how is he kind of ironing out his inconsistencies, attacking hitters more, avoiding the long balls, which is difficult to do in Arizona. but that's going to be something he needs to work on. Bubic, I think, is intriguing just because of the upside, because he did look so good last year out of the pen. Everything I keep hearing is that, they're going to bring him along slowly. They're going to bring him along slowly. He hasn't pitched that many innings over the last 2 years. I mean, it's something like 45 innings over the last 2 years. So it's been a minute since he's been a full-time starter. And when he was, let's remember, when he was a starter a couple years ago, he would have some good starts, but overall, I think his ERA as a starter is close to 5. So he hasn't really done it in the past. Now, he may be a different pitcher now where he's kind of figured things out, and he deserves that opportunity to show what he can do. But I kind of feel like he may be an option later down the road where if Marsh gets off to a slow start, they're like, okay, let's get Bubic in there. We can limit his innings a little bit and let him have a couple chances through the rotation. And then Kyle Wright's kind of the X factor. I don't know exactly what his timetable is. I know it's been a whole year since he has pitched, so I expect them to kind of bring him along slowly. He may start out on rehab assignment in Omaha to begin the season. But, if he seems to be on track in the spring training, maybe they throw him out there to start the year. So it's nice to have these kind of options, right? So, and like I said, you probably need all these guys at some point. Just because of the attrition rate of starting pitchers.
Max Reaper of Rose Review is our guest. Now, the outlook of the AL Central as a whole, how do you think it breaks down this year? Is it better than last year? Is it worse than last year? Last year, obviously, the AL Central was maybe the biggest surprise of any division in Major League Baseball. I mean, the thought process was, no, not going to be very good, and then it turns out, okay, maybe 4 teams are going to be pretty darn solid. My thought process was you'll see 4 solid teams this year. Probably none of the 4 will crest the 90-win mark, but still you'll probably see 4 competitive teams again, with the White Sox still being the White Sox. What's your takeaway and outlook on the AL Central this year?
Yeah, I think every projection model has all, the top 4 teams all winning between 80 and 86 games, which kind of seems right. Although, the way these things go, someone's going to, separate themselves, or maybe 2 teams, and end up winning 90 games. It's been a slow off season for almost all the teams. I think the Royals have probably been the most active out of the top 4 teams, which is a little surprising. But in the same way, Minnesota and Cleveland have been kind of in austerity mode a little bit. They've been cutting back on payroll, and these are also mostly young teams that don't necessarily need a whole lot of expensive free agents to bring in. They have a good young core in a lot of these teams, and so they don't need to really splurge necessarily. I was a little surprised Detroit wasn't more active. I know they were pursuing Alex Bregman and ultimately didn't get him, but I thought maybe they'd make some more moves than they did. They did get Jack Flaherty to come back. So they're kind of my team that, the way they came on at the end of last year, and they do have a pretty good core of young pitching that with Flaherty at the top and Skubal at the top. That's pretty intriguing. And you need that pitching to make it through a full season. Their lineup is not as good. So kind of the same boat as Kansas City, except they don't have a Bobby Witt Jr. in their lineup. But, they're the team I think that I'm kind of looking at as, okay, they got, they made their breakthrough last year as the Royals did as well. It could be these 2 teams kind of battling throughout the year. Minnesota, I think they're kind of like the falling empire right now. They're the team that everyone thought was going to be good for several years, and it just seems like that mix is not really working out, and we could see them regress even more. And then Cleveland's kind of always in the mix, it seems like. They don't do much, but it seems like they just find guys out of their system or find guys off waivers, and suddenly they're solid players somehow. I have a lot of questions about their starting rotation. I think their bullpen probably overperformed a little bit, and they ended up trading away some of those guys this year. So they could have some pitching problems. So Detroit and Kansas City, I think, have the best pitching in the division, which I think that's going to be what carries them to contention this year.
Max, surprise player to make the opening day roster. Who is it going to be?
Surprise player. Well, you look at the non-roster invitees. I don't think many of them have a great chance of making the roster because we have a pretty settled team at this point. But there is a spot, I think, at the end of the bench, the kind of the Garrett Hampson role, if you will. I think Cavan Biggio is probably the best shot at making that team as a bench player. He's got a lot of positional versatility. He's a guy that hasn't hit really well the last couple of years, but still produces pretty good on base numbers because he walks so much. And so he kind of fits a lot of the boxes that J.J. Piccola's talked about: positional versatility. He's talked about having a left-handed bat off the bench, and then a guy that can work the count a little bit and give you a good at bat. So I think he's kind of the non-roster invitee. I think is going to make the team. But there's guys like Harold Castro, Cam Devaney's a guy in the minors that they acquired for Taylor Clark a year ago. And he put up a really good season in Omaha last year. He's got some of that positional versatility as well. Doesn't have any major league experience, but if he has a strong spring in Arizona, maybe he's a surprise to make the team. So I think whoever makes the last bench spot position is probably going to be a guy that a lot of fans aren't familiar with. But a lot of times those guys end up being pretty solid contributors. And at least they're not paying Garrett Hampson $2 million to make base running gaffes and drop fly balls.
It could be Michael Garcia to an extent, too, as that super utility. Now, I do get what you're saying with Biggio with the left-handed bat. That makes sense. That's the Adam Frazier who you're not paying the free agent money to. And then Michael Garcia is basically the Garrett Hampson version. I think that does make some sense personally. Max, record prediction, though. It's February 19th. You got to do it right now. What do the Royals end up at?
Well, I still think they need to add a bat. If they added a bat, I feel pretty good about their chances to win the division. Right now, seeing the roster right now, seeing Detroit, seeing the other teams, I'll put them as 85 wins. I think that's good enough to be in the mix within a game or two. And maybe that's enough to win the division. But I think really adding that bat would put them over the top at this point. So we'll see. Fingers crossed.
Max Reaper of Royals Review. Check out all his great work. He's the editor-in-chief. You've been the editor-in-chief at Royals Review since, 2014?
Yeah.
A decade, 11 years now. Look at you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd like to take a lot of credit for the success of that run in 2014 and 15 because I took over, I think, right as they started taking off. So.
And they're taking off again. So basically, what's the constant? It's Max. So make sure you check out all his great work out there on Royals Review. Max, always a pleasure.
Thanks a lot, Sterling. I appreciate it.
We'll take a break. We'll come back. More Zone, Sports Radio 810 WHB. Welcome back to the Zone. Sports Radio 810 WHB. Sterling Holmes, Dylan Michaels, Mick Schaefer joining at 1. We'll do a little whiskey wind down, Rotten Tomatoes, potentially what grinds my gears. Dylan, so you have your 3 movies for Rotten Tomatoes? He's shaking his head yes. I need to get my 3 still. Mick, I know you're listening. Get those 3 movies. I want to have some fun. Jason Anderson back tomorrow. Again, Jack Johnson was down there at Surprise, Arizona for spring training. Again, little not breaking news anymore because we talked about it earlier on, but if you do have Amazon Prime, the Royals will be on Amazon Prime Video this season. That was released earlier today. Kansas City tweeted that out. Dylan's happy. Very happy.
There's a lot of people that should be happy. I don't know.
Thrilled.
It's easier to find people that don't have Amazon Prime, in my opinion, nowadays.
I think my wife has it. Because it's Thursday Night Football, right?
Yeah.
Oh, then yeah, we have it.
Do you order things off Amazon ever?
Me? No. Hashtag shop local.
Congratulations.
I'm also a vegan and I do CrossFit. What else?
You do have the ability to
I'm
watch
being
Thursday
facetious,
Night
by the way.
Football. So
Yes.
you'll have the Royals.
Thank you. Thanks, Nat. I thank my wife for all that. So all the streaming services we have, I just assume we have because so she can watch her programs, her shows. What?
You might be the youngest person that's ever said so she can watch her programs.
What?
In this day and age.
What do you say?
It's just shows or favorite shows, anything but programs.
So she can watch her programs.
Yeah. All right.
I'm 30. I'm old, I guess. I don't know. Sorry, I just assumed that's what people said. I'm not a big TV guy. You know this about me.
Game Show Network.
I'm a GSN man myself.
Do they still do Sports Jeopardy with Dan Patrick? Because those were all time.
No, they've been doing Pop Culture Jeopardy right now.
Did you ever watch the Sports Jeopardy?
Yeah, they were electric.
The best.
Awesome.
My buddy in college had it like TiVoed, so every single like newer or replay just stacked up, and whenever you're bored, you just toss those on, some beers, good time.
That's what it is. You
Right.
remember that guy? You're like, remember Raphael Forcall? What'd he do?
We can't play real Jeopardy because there's like actual world facts, things like that. But when it just narrows it down, you feel a little smarter.
Yeah, you're like, Edgar Renteria.
You
Why does he have so many
answer
questions?
some of these questions.
Yeah, I loved it. All right. My programs. Come on, don't make fun of me. Again, Jack was down there at Surprise, and I thought this was another interesting one. We heard from Chris Bubich, his one-on-one. We heard from his one-on-one yesterday with Bobby Witt Jr. He also had a one-on-one with Michael Massey, and I think it's interesting because there's some questions, one, about his health, two, where's he going to play? With Jonathan India obviously coming over to Kansas City, India's now slotted in as the leadoff hitter. I think we all can assume that because his on-base percentage is robust, and it's what the Royals really need ahead of Bobby. So where does that leave Michael Massey? His bat has still been pretty solid. The glove, when healthy, has been pretty solid, but he's also had the back injuries, and he's second base. Well, India is going to play second base more than likely. He might have a smattering of third, but if someone's going to move around, you'd have to imagine it's Michael Massey. So Jack got to the bottom of it with him down there in Surprise. Here is Jack with Michael Massey.
Down here in Surprise, Arizona, with one of the Royals starters and one of the heroes from the postseason run a year ago, Michael Massey. First and foremost, Michael, thanks for jumping on the show today.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
What's it like for you now showing up to camp where you've worked your way through the minor league level, now you've become a regular starter and one of the mainstays in this lineup? Does the mentality shift at all for you? Is it kind of the same focus each and every time you show up to Surprise?
I think it's the same, each time you show up. And, I think one of the things that I've learned through my professional career is you got to earn it every day because it's, anytime you're playing with the best 750 players in the world, and there's a bunch of guys always coming for your job. So showing up, earning it every day, and just trying to be a contributing member to a winning team.
Now, this spring training a little bit different. Talked with J.J. Picola today. We've talked with Matt Quatrero. You and Jonathan India sharing the same position, but also learning a couple of new spots, and him saying, look, these guys are here to win. They'll play wherever they need to help us win baseball games. How has that transition been like? I know we saw Jonathan out there taking some outfield work. You were at second base today, but is that an opportunity that excites you to move around a little bit?
Yeah, I think any opportunity you have, like I said, it's a close group of guys in there. So any opportunity that you have to benefit them and help the team and win games is really all you're trying to do. That's what we sign up for every single year. So just excited for the opportunity, and it's been great the first couple weeks with Jonathan. He's a great dude, and he's going to fit in really well with us.
Now, last season you deal a little bit with that back injury that was bothering you throughout the season. What's it like today? You feel 100%, like it's not an issue anymore, or is that someone that's still kind of carrying on?
No, I feel really good. I think I've dealt with it for some years, and I think it's something that is one of those injuries that's probably never going to run away from me. It's probably going to be always something I deal with. But that being said, I feel like I've learned some things throughout my career, and training staff here has done a great job, and just something we're going to have to manage, right? And at this point, I'm going to be 27 this year. I feel like everybody's got something they're dealing with, whether it's an arm injury, a back injury, a knee. And you just got to make sure you're doing your work and try to stay as healthy as possible, and be able to fight through some things as well.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you were on another podcast with former White Sox A.J. Brzezinski, Scott Braun's on there as well, kind of talking about that shift of going from second base to the outfield, moving around. And last year when you felt that back injury or just bother you a little bit, it was in the field, not so much at the plate?
Yeah, I would say for me the bigger issue throughout my career has been playing lower to the ground when I have those flare-ups. Obviously anybody with any sort of back issue would understand that. When you're trying to go left and go right and dive and move around, it's a little bit tougher in the field. Rotation has never bothered me. So even when I'm in a flare-up, I've always been able to hit, which is why we did the DH thing a little bit last year. And again, potentially, obviously it works out with India being here, but potentially the outfield playing a little bit more upright, not being so low. Again, could be worse, could be better. I don't know, but we'll have to see how camp goes and just give that time.
We're here with Michael Massey down in Surprise, Arizona. You bounced around the lineup a little bit last year, and a lot of that is how Matt Quatrero likes to manage his lineups. Guys hit just about everywhere, it feels like. But was there a spot that felt extra comfortable to you? You led off in the postseason. You also hit in the middle of the order. Which one feels more comforting?
Yeah, like I said, I'm a big whatever helps the team, right? If I got to hit first, I got to hit first. I got to hit fifth, I got to hit fifth. If 2 years ago I hit third for a couple games, right? So it's being able to do what the team needs, and the reality is after you get through the first inning or your first time through the lineup, it's pretty much all jumbled up anyway. So I think probably the most part of the year I hit in the middle of the order, 5, 6, kind of in that spot, which I enjoyed, and being able to drive in the runs that maybe Sal or Vinny didn't get in, and just kind of clean up there. But like I said, if I got to lead off and put together some good at-bats and get on base for Junior, that's something I enjoy doing as well.
You guys got to experience postseason ball for a Royals team for the first time since 2015. There were teams with high expectations even after 2015, but you were the guys that delivered with that type of pressure on you guys going into last year. What's the focus this camp now, where you go from last year, you're losing 106, now you have maybe the wish to win games, the hopefulness to win games. Now it feels like an expectation to win games. So what's that mindset like? How does that shift from one year to the next?
Yeah, I think a lot of that's just noise. I think that's outside noise, and one thing I'm learning is that if you're gonna do this job and do this job well, you got to have tunnel vision. And for me, this camp feels the same as it did last year, and it feels the same as it did 2 years ago. Every time we come out here, we expect to win games, and I know that the past couple seasons before last year didn't quite go how we expected, but I think coming into last year, everybody in that clubhouse knew we could win and win at a high level. So for me, it's more the same and taking care of your business. Q loves the today phrase, which I think is great, right? Because it gets you focused on what can you do today to win games. And that's really where our focus is at.
And speaking of the postseason, you arguably had the best moment of the postseason. The triple against New York at Kauffman Stadium, Game 3. When that ball gets past Juan Soto and right, and you hear the crowd behind you, and you're rounding the bases, Do you even feel your legs or anything at that point, or is that one where you're just lost in the moment?
Oh, I was so lost in the moment. That was one of the coolest. I shouldn't say one of the coolest. It was by far the coolest moment of my career, just to be able to do it at Kauffman, and have the roar of that crowd, which is unlike any that I've heard. So to be screaming in Vance Wilson's face at third base was awesome. Yeah, that's my favorite baseball moment, I think, to this day. So something I think I'll remember forever.
I asked Lucas Ursig about this yesterday, and going on the road in the postseason. You guys have to go to Baltimore. You sweep them out of the postseason. You go to New York, one of the more hostile environments of all of baseball. What was that like for you first time around? Because for some of the guys, right, they'd been in the postseason. Michael Wacha, he'd experienced it on the biggest of stages. But for you to be in front of opposing fans, sold-out crowds, they're hostile, how do you stay focused on just the 9 innings in front of you and knowing that it's do or die pretty much every time in the postseason?
Yeah, I think, obviously you got to give credit to coaching staff, got to give credit to the veterans that have been there before. I think they helped us a lot. And I think going back to what we were talking about with coming into camp, I think your mindset's just to go out there and try to do your job, right? And the rest of it is noise, whether we're playing and there's, 1,000 people here in Surprise or there's 50,000 in Yankee Stadium. At the end of the day, a ground ball to second base, and a 94-mile-an-hour pitch is a 94-mile-an-hour pitch. And so being able to get your mind in that spot to where, you're just playing. And you kind of gotta lose that fear of what people think of you and just go out there and do your thing and compete for your teammates.
And one more here for you, Michael. Really appreciate your time. There's one thing you want to leave Surprise with, whether it be about your game or just the mental part of the game. What would it be leading you guys into the regular season?
I just want to leave Surprise this year. I got stuck here last year. I was floating in the pool during opening day, so my biggest thing is just get out of here healthy and ready to win some games.
All right, Michael. Thanks so much for joining us, and good luck this spring.
I appreciate it, guys.
I was stuck here last year, floating in the pool. Great from Michael Massey. Great job from Jack down there in Surprise, Arizona. For him, the back injury that's been plaguing Michael, which he mentioned for a couple of years now, says injuries happen lower to the ground. So he even thought that the outfield might be better for his back. Also went on to say it doesn't affect his swing, the rotation part of it, the torque, if you will. So that's why he was able to DH last year. So we'll see with Michael Massey. I do think left field, right field, giving him that outfield glove hopefully will help with the injuries, keep him in the lineup. His bat was good last year. Not great, but good. OPS 743. The slugging obviously was there with the home runs and the doubles. Issue with him is the vision has not translated from the minors to the majors. His walk percentage is way down, 6th percentile in all of baseball, and walk rate not great. But he doesn't strike out very much. Maybe being more selective might help. But again, Michael Massey helps extend the lineup, so keeping his bat in is big. We'll see if he can play the outfield and keep that back healthy. We will take a break. We're going to come back. When we come back, I do want to touch on a few NFL and Chiefs news. So we will do that after this right here on The Zone, Sports Radio 810 WHB. breaking news. Per Dan Graziano, the NFL Today informed teams that the 2025 per-team salary cap will fall in the range of $277.5 million to $281.5 million. Way up from last year's $255.4 million. That is big. That is huge. That is a Trey Smithian contract. What? Don't shake your head, Dylan. Am I wrong?
We could spend that money in a lot of places. I would love to have Trey Smith.
I didn't say on him. I'm saying the size of what we expect Trey Smith to get is.
Oh, yeah.
That's a Trey Smithian sized contract.
The Bears have more room to bump up whatever they're going to pay.
Or the Chiefs are probably going to go out and overpay for a left tackle or something. I don't know.
I just don't see who.
Ronnie Stanley with injuries or Cam Robinson. I don't like it, but
I don't like it either.
I doubt it happens. I don't even put that in the atmosphere. The point remains, that is a massive jump, at a minimum, $22 million jump. At a minimum, a $22 million jump from the cap last year.
More than what they expected, too. It says a lot of top executives were expecting less than what it went up. So
yeah, so this is, again, it is what it is because every team has the same thing to work with. So we always think, oh, look how much money there is to work with now. It makes the previous contracts look better, right? But what it really does is it's now Jamar Chase is sitting here going, you know how I wanted 35? Yeah, now I want 39.
Who's the next quarterback that's going to get $55 million regardless of accomplishment?
It's like Daniel Jones when he got his.
Yep.
Was Daniel Jones worth it? No, but the salary cap went up, so we might as well pay him. So that's what it comes down to.
I think Trevor Lawrence is the final one.
You think T-Law?
I mean, look at how that's turning out. How can you – because if I'm a GM, I'm pointing right at that one every single time. Because what the agents do is say, well, Deshaun Watson has a fully guaranteed contract. You're not going to give my quarterback that, and then they work backwards from that. If I'm a GM, I'm doing the opposite with Trevor Lawrence's contract.
So $22 million extra in salary cap, which makes the Joe Thuney situation a little different now. Do you want to extend him? You don't have to, because part of it was you had to bring the cap hit down. But with more cap to work with, doesn't matter. Just some interesting, I think, thought process going forward, again, with it being higher than expected. For the current contracts, that is the biggest change, more so than, in my opinion, the upcoming contracts, because what it comes down to is every team has that expanse of money.
And usually
it goes to quarterbacks, typically.
That, and also they're planning for that when we talk about, hey, we can sign this, we can sign this player, not this player. They're already accounting for what their projections were, which this is more than the projected increase, according to some executives. So
yes,
there will be extra money, it looks like, for them to play with.
So the cap will have increased by more than $53 million over the last 2 years.
That's crazy, because I was told that everyone wasn't going to watch anymore because Taylor Swift's just shown way too much. So
no one wanted to watch the Chiefs-Eagles.
That's right. And
everyone hates the Chiefs.
And Chiefs-49ers. Everyone hated Brock Purdy and the Chiefs.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Everyone hates the Chiefs so much that the salary cap rose by more than what most expected because they hate the Chiefs and no one watches anymore.
Yep.
Wow.
Now, it's almost as if they're Floyd Mayweather, where the people watch just to see them either win or lose, but you're watching.
Yeah, or maybe like people just like to complain on Twitter, and Twitter's not real life.
Very true.
Maybe. Could be. I just think this is great news for Kansas City with some of their current contracts they have. It's great news for every team, let's be real. Great news for the players. They're the ones that get the biggest benefit.
Saints.
The Saints, the Eagles, who had $390.4 million void years.
It's when you were making that point, I was like, I don't like this idea. But now, when you really don't get punished.
Nope.
You do eventually, but
if you don't hit on draft picks, you get punished.
Right. If you do, then every year the salary cap goes up, and it almost gives you extra cushion that you weren't even planning for. Like this year, they got more money than they were even planning.
It's money under the couch. You come home.
Banana stand.
There's always money at the banana stand, Dylan. There's always money at the banana stand. Mick Schaefer coming up next. Going to play Rotten Tomatoes with Mick. Do a little whiskey wind down. Get his thoughts on the Missouri-Bama game tonight. Maybe talk a little Chiefs. Welcome back to the Zone, Sports Radio 810 WHB. Sterling Holmes, Dylan Michaels, Mick Schaefer wearing a scarf. You look good.
I know.
Stylish.
I know, Sterling. Yeah, you lose a lot of heat in the neck, so you want to wear scarves as much as possible.
I feel like parents always told us you lose all your heat out of your head. They were always like, you'll lose 90% of your out of your head if you don't wear a hat. And I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers on it. It's close to your neck, so I imagine neck's a big, important spot.
I was always told that, and if you turn the light on in the back of a car, that it's illegal. It's illegal.
Yeah.
You're done for. It would blind
Seconds
the driver
away from crashing.
From peril.
Yeah.
And
it's a selfish move. It is. My kids will do it. My wife will do it. I'm like, what are you doing? Yes, we're not gonna crash, but maybe don't give me that glare, so you can, I don't know.
Well, now there's
read
no point.
Your book.
Well, yeah, reading books, but I don't assume you read.
No, I'm the driver in this.
Okay, so that makes sense.
scenario.
And your kids probably do because they're smart.
They also have those little clip-on lights for books that work just fine.
Back in the day when you were like a kid, it was the Game Boy because Game Boys didn't have
the
LED
light.
in the back. So you had Dylan knows what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah, so you had to have lights on. So it was horrible as a kid. You couldn't play. Like under the covers, you'd be like, "Will you play in your Game Boy?" Well, no, you couldn't because there's no lights. It's dark. You have to have your whole lights on, which wakes the house up. Got in trouble for that.
Kids don't know how bad it was. We would always road trip stop at like those big old Love stores and get like a little square little board game, right? To play, or get like a coloring book or something like that. Road trips were so boring. There was no.
But you guys had the sweet
iPhones.
back seats that flipped around so you could play like chess and those games.
That's the vans back in the day were
station
awesome.
wagons too.
Why did the vans, the technology have gone way downhill?
Agreed, because you could play poker in those vans. You could swing the captain's chairs around. You had like an L-shaped love seat back there. And then you had this little table you set up. You flip it over. You could play poker on it. Or eat on it, whatever you want. And so I bowled a lot growing up. You can tell athletic build like this was a hell of a bowler. So we would take all these road trips every Saturday and travel league bowling. And we would all bring our bags of coins and we'd play poker. I had no idea how to play poker. And I lost every hand. I think even some of the hands I would win, they would tell me I lost. And they would take my coins from me. But those are the good old days. In those old, was it Econoline vans? I don't know who made them. But like everybody in my hometown, like everybody's parents owned those vans.
One of the I'm gonna look it up, but one van company, and I want to say it was Chrysler, came out where all the seats could, even the driver and passenger seat could flip around, so you could almost have like a meeting or a conference in the van, so everyone could face each other. So obviously that can't be used anywhere but parking lot because clearly you can't do that from the driver's seat.
I remember they made these portable quote unquote TVs that would plug into the cigarette lighter, and it'd be off antenna, so you could technically get ABC, CBS, ABC, NBC, CBS. But you had to be like really close to the market. So I lived an hour away from Wichita. And so once we got like maybe 10 minutes away, we'd get like a grainy little image. And then once we passed through town, it was gone. We had nothing.
I just the realistic answer is probably because it was very dangerous for having all these just chairs that no one really had seatbelts in and stuff's flying everywhere. That's probably the real answer.
It's harder to have the seatbelt on when the thing's swung around.
When it's a love seat. But I get that. But, that's a risk that I'm willing to take.
Absolutely. Same. I'm there.
You would have made that trip to New Orleans that you had to drive down to way more fun.
Would have been way better with one of those old
way
vans.
More
Getting
fun.
9 miles to the gallon. Way better.
I remember going to Cracker Barrel just to get, you'd get like, they may have been cassettes actually, and getting audiobooks, and you'd get them at Cracker Barrel. And then it turned to CDs, but
we would
that
get
was
the comedy tapes at these at the Loves and pop them in and just listen to an hour of comedy down the road to waste some more time.
You and I, not too different.
Well, yeah, we are. You're like 20 years younger than me. Don't try to.
I'm 30.
You're 30 years old, but I'm about to be 48, buddy.
Yeah, it's not quite there.
That's a generation. That's a generation difference.
A lifetime.
It is.
Yeah. By the way, for the kids. We talked about it with Kevin Timmons on Friday. Make sure you guys go to forthekidskc.org. Lifting Spirits and their event they're hosting. If you can't make it, they're still doing these $10 raffle tickets. They're on sale now. 40 names will be drawn, and the list of bourbons is just absurd. It is just incredible. You will not find a selection like this anywhere. Pappy Van Winkle, 23-year. Willett, 10-year Purple Top, which is just good luck trying to find that.
Okay.
You're not going to find it.
I won't
so
look.
you're going to have
I'll
to
take your
try
word
it.
for
And again, you could win that for $10. There's a chance that you could win that for $10. So it's all going to a great cause, just a phenomenal cause. So make sure you go for the kids, kc.org. That is F-O-R-E, for like golf. Just a ridiculous Midwinter Nights Dram, which again I've talked about, which is one of my favorite bourbons I've ever had. That's in there. That's actually one from Utah. Whistle Pig, 15-year rye. Old Rip Van Winkle, 10-year. Jack Daniels, 12-year. He brought in, what did he bring in last time? That was just absurd. Was it the Wild Turkey?
It was Wild Turkey. That's right.
It was that Wild Turkey. Let me see if I can find it. It was the Wild Turkey that, Masters Keep Triumph, that one in a massive bottle in a case. I mean, there are just some ridiculous bourbons that will be here. Again, it's that $10 raffle. It will be on the 27th, so you have 8 days. Get your raffle tickets, $10, Lifting Spirits on forthekidskc.org. Nick Jacobs has done a phenomenal job, which, by the way, we'll get into Rotten Tomatoes in the second segment. We're going to have some fun in the second segment.
Nick is selfishly taking the week off, by the way. So this is probably why he's unearthed these numbers.
Did he hear that I was potentially on Sunday sound off, and he said, get me as far away from this set?
He'll be back Sunday, don't you worry. I think
feel
I'm going to
so
have you
bad for him.
Sunday after that. Are you available then?
I am.
Okay, let's do it then.
Let's do it.
Sunday after that.
I thought it was really interesting because we keep talking about the offensive line, and you need to put some investments in there and all this stuff. And he goes, well, they've made at least 22 investments in the offensive line since 2020. 3 of the offensive linemen will have the top 6 in cap hits on the team in 2025. Yeah. They've spent money. They've spent picks. It's just not working. And
it's worked at some positions.
It's worked. Creed Humphrey's worked. Joe Tooney's worked. But overall, when you're spending
Trey Smith has worked.
3 of the top 6, cap hits in the NFL, offensive line-wise, on one team, you'd expect to have this phenomenal O-line. You'd expect to see greatness perpetually and consistently. They've been good. Creed Humphrey's been great. Joe Tooney's been great. Trey Smith has been really good. I wouldn't put him in the great category personally.
Well, he's going to get money like he's
going to get
great.
He's going to get money like he's great. And then you obviously have
Juwan
Taylor.
I would say Juwan Taylor, outside of, once the play starts, he's been good, right? Aside from the fall starts.
3 of the top 6 cap hits on the team.
Left tackle's been an issue.
Because Juwan's cap hit this year is $27.3 million.
Won 2 Super Bowls.
No, agreed.
With,
There's nuance to all this conversation. I just thought it was some numbers that Nick pulled up. I don't know why you're so anti-Nick Jacobs right now.
Well, I can tell you some stories. So 22 investments. So that's draft picks. That's
from 2020. So the
free agent signings. That's trades. Whatever.
So that includes.
Does that
22.
include 2 for Creed Humphrey in his second contract, or just 1?
Lucas Niang, Creed Humphrey.
These are 22 people.
So there's been 8 picks in 5 years.
Yeah.
Lucas, Creed, Trey, Darian Kennard, Wanye Morris, Kingsley Suamataia, Hunter Norzad, C.J. Hansen. Yep. Now, again, not all pick is going to be created equally. Darian Kennard, C.J. Hansen, Hunter Norzad, but Lucas Niang was a little higher. He was a 3rd rounder, correct? Yeah. Wanye Morris, 3rd rounder. Kingsley Suamataia, 2nd rounder. Free agents. They've had 11 in 5 years. Mike Rimmers, I forgot how to say his name. He was decent. The guy from Houston for a little bit. Osemele. Osemele.
I think it's...
No, I know Kalichi. How do you say his last name? Osemele?
I was correct.
I nailed it.
Yeah.
So I should have been confident.
I forgot about that guy.
So I should have been confident and just rolled with it, and I would have been right. Yeah. Daniel Kilgore, remember him? Joe Tooney.
No.
Kyle Long, Austin Blythe, Garon Christian, Prince Tagovailoa, Juwan Taylor, Donovan Smith, DJ Humphries. Now, the free agent list has not been ideal.
Yeah.
It's not been a whole bunch of highly touted guys.
I want to know, though, where does that rank? Is 22 a high number in that span? Is it mid, low? I imagine it's probably not low. But
Nick Jacobs, you're listening right now.
Do it for the other 31 teams, Nick.
Yeah, do it for all
See you
teams.
Sunday.
That's the Sunday sound-off question. Here's my question to Nick Jacobs. Nick Jacobs, can you find this for 31 other teams, please?
And this is in 5 years?
5 years.
So roughly 4+ moves per year on the offensive line, and you typically carry, 9 of them, 10 sometimes on the 53
One
man?
trade, Orlando Brown Jr.,
Yeah.
and then 2 undrafted, Mike Caliendo and Ethan Driscoll. So I just thought it was interesting. They've done all this. 3 of their top 6 cap hits on the team are the offensive line.
I agree. For as great as the individual talent is lauded and supposedly is on this offensive line, I would expect a better run game. I would expect overall better pass protection. But it doesn't. What is it? The sum of the parts.
It's like KU basketball right now, where the sum of the parts is
Oh,
lesser
it's not
than the
that
individual.
bad, buddy.
I'm
It's
kidding.
not that bad.
It wasn't the Super Bowl, but no, you're correct. It is not that bad. But the point I was trying to make was the talent's there, but the sum has not been. Which is that an Andy Heck thing? Is that just a personnel? They're not meshing together. Could be a multitude of reasons. But then Nick Jacobs went a step further. Again, shout out Nick for all this research. Appreciate it because I don't want to do it, and you did.
Yeah,
at least I'm giving him credit for it, right?
Yeah,
I'm
that was
at least-
this is a segment right here. You don't have to research or prepare.
Yeah,
for.
thank you, Nick. But
Like all the other ones.
Dylan, I will come back there and
Dab you up.
Not do much. I'll have Mick go back there and take care of you.
Yeah, we'll just hang back there. We'll smoke a cigar.
Breakdown of current left tackles in the NFL, where they were drafted.
This is Nick again.
This is Nick again because this is one. I'm glad he did this because again, I didn't know where to start besides just taking forever, and he just probably took forever to do this. So Nick Jacobs, thank you yet again. So drafted by the original team and where they were drafted overall left tackles.
Okay.
Ronnie Stanley, 6th overall. I'll just go through the numbers.
Oh, are you gonna do all 32 here?
Because I'll just tell you the spots instead of the names. 6th, 14th, 7th, 20th, 15th, 13th, 4th, 16th, 23rd, 6th, 14th, 13th, 6th, 9th. By the way, the numbers...
Was that about 20 of them so far?
Yeah, that's 15 so far.
So 15...
The lowest one has been 23rd overall.
All first round?
All first round. 23rd overall has been the lowest.
Are there still more first rounders?
Through trades, Laramie Tunsil, 13th. Trent Williams, 4th. Then you get to the Patriots, 6th rounder. So the Patriots, we've got to one team out of 18 so far that's not been a first rounder.
Okay.
There's been 8 drafted outside of the
if
first
I were
round.
Sterling and Nick, I might have put these in order, and then my mind is spinning right now. But keep going.
Nick did enough work.
Nick did enough.
Yeah, Sterling could have just done this and put them in order.
There's been, looks like 12 non-first rounders.
So 20
5th,
first rounders.
2nd, 4th, 3rd. Jordan Mailata, 7th. Walker Little, 2nd. Rasheed Walker, 7th. 3rd. And then Jackson for the Rams was an undrafted free agent.
Who was he counting for the Chiefs?
He didn't count. He didn't do Chiefs.
Okay.
So
11, 20 and 11 then. 20 first rounders, 11 non.
And the lowest in a lot of the first rounds looks like 23rd. And I bring this up, which I'm glad Nick did.
Humphreys could be a number 1, right, when he first round pick. If you got him for the
that is a good
Chiefs.
call. But the point remains, Chiefs don't draft that high.
No.
The odds of them getting and hitting on a left tackle, and that's why I keep talking about it. Even 23rd, you have to trade up for to get to 23rd from 31. Everyone kept talking about Alt last year. Do you know how much draft capital was going to? I mean,
Curtis and Seren did it.
I know they talked about it.
They would have to take this year's draft.
Ricky
first.
Williams type draft.
That's what I sent him a picture of Dick and Ricky Williams.
And so it's why I've kind of gone through this, and this was a good jumping off point of, it's not as simple as just fix the left tackle spot. The Chiefs have put resources into the offensive line. 22 since 2020. Not all left tackle, of course, but 22 resources, picks or trades or free agents. They've tried to figure out left tackle, but Kingsley Suamataia wasn't 6th, 14th, 7th, 20th, 13th, 4th. Like, he wasn't one of those guys. The odds are if you are going to be a left tackle in the NFL, you are a top 20 pick. There are
And
some
if you're the Chiefs, if you're drafting at 30, 31, 32 every year, then you need to go through free agency to get your left tackle.
And there are, again,
spend capital, not draft capital.
There are some situations that, yeah, you're right. There are some third-rounders, some second-rounders, 2 seventh-rounders, but you're now talking about the outlier, not the norm.
Sure.
And so everyone keeps just saying, well, get a left tackle. And I just don't think it's that simple. It's why I keep saying I wouldn't be surprised if next year your options at left tackle are DJ Humphries and Kingsley Suamataia. It's not what people want to hear. It's not what I want to hear.
But that's a smart.
But
it might be the smart decision, because here's what I'm worried about is we didn't pay the tax on Trent Williams. We didn't pay the tax of paying a little bit extra for an Orlando Brown Jr. Don't go and do that this year to try and course correct 2 mistakes you made in the past, and not even mistakes. Like, if those are the budgets you have and you can't go over a certain number, that's how you negotiate in the NFL. But don't go and try and catch Trent Williams and Orlando Brown Jr. paying for Cam Robinson or Ronnie Staley.
Yes. And so I think that's what it comes down to. Ronnie Stanley was in this one as 6th overall. That's where he was drafted. Cam Robinson, it wasn't in this one because I believe was he injured? Or he was, I guess, the backup too.
Because the current starter.
Well, no, it's Christian Darrisaw. He filled in for Christian Darrisaw halfway through the season.
Darrisaw and Slater, by the way, I would like to know, of those draft picks that you guys went through, 1, how many of them are playing starting left tackle, and then 2, at a high level?
Yeah.
Because Penei Sewell's a right tackle. Alt, right tackle.
Yeah.
And the list goes on and
Tristan
on.
Wirfs
started as a right tackle.
But that was my point. He was a guy he's the one that really made that transition from right to left. I just thought it was an interesting conversation to have of it's getting a left tackle, a stud left tackle. Getting a serviceable left tackle is hard enough. Getting a stud left tackle is, I don't want to say impossible, but you have to have a high draft pick to get it, and you have to be pretty lucky as well.
When you boil down the position of the definition of it, it's the hardest position to find and play in the NFL besides quarterback. You're
and
on
I wonder
an island constantly against the best athletes in the world.
I wonder if those first-round picks spent on tackles, right or left, what's the hit rate on guys that are starters, like within the first 2 years of their time in the NFL, to where, like, okay, if they were to trade up, do a Ricky Williams style, but not a Mahomes type pick, go from 27 to 10, right? You got your guy there sitting at 12. We're going to give up a couple first rounders, another second round, whatever. What are the chances this guy's going to hit? Is it 50%? Is it 65? Is it still lower?
I would
35?
I would assume lower, and also it's also year 1, which is why, again, I've pumped the brakes on Kingsley. I still think there's room for him to grow, and I'm not completely giving up on him yet. He was a second rounder who was very raw.
Yeah.
He's 22 years old. All these things. I'm not completely ready to just throw the towel on him yet, because when you do look at that, a lot of guys. Was Colton Miller great year 1? No. Was Andrew Thomas great year 1, who was drafted 4th overall?
I wasn't watching those guys.
Okay, Andrew Thomas was not. The whole thing was he's already a bust. He was 4th overall. And now he's been a top half, probably top 10, around the 8 to 12 range left tackle in the NFL, right?
Well, Eric Fisher went from being a guy the Chiefs fans wanted to run out of town for the first 5 years here to being his absence being the reason they got blown out in the Super Bowl.
Tristan Wirfs started off as a right tackle. I mean, the point remains, it's just a hard spot. So as much as fans, and we all want the left tackle spot to get solved and we want an answer, what I've basically found is there's no great answer this year. I know that's not what people want to hear, but I'm trying to be realistic about, we've talked about before you got on the expansion of the cap this year, how it went from 277 or went from 255 to 277 to 281, which was larger than what most people expected. So it raised at least $22 million. I just don't want the Chiefs to overspend on a Cam or a Ronnie Stanley unless it's a 2-year deal. There's question marks with both those guys. And again, Cam Robinson isn't this stud. He's not the answer. Jacksonville wanted him gone. The Jaguar fans wanted him gone. Look at PFF. It's not great. Just left tackle is so damn hard to find and solve. When Nick Jacobs did this, and I come to my realization, it almost comes down to, is the best option for next year DJ Humphries and you hope Kingsley Suamataia progresses because that's almost what I
put
came down to.
Wanye in that conversation.
Not anymore. I think Wanye is more of a right. Which Dylan's like finally Sterling's off the Wanye Morris train. I was the fan club supporter. I actually had T-shirts made.
Yeah.
He's a jovial guy. He's nice. He's fun.
Oh well, okay. Then put me at left tackle.
Well, you're not nice.
I'm a blast.
You're jovial and fun, but you're not nice.
Oh, you got to be all
he
three
had
of those.
all three of those
okay,
things.
Okay, gotcha.
I still think Wanye Morris could be the right tackle, maybe for a year once Jawan Taylor's contract's over. But that was kind of the realization I had. So I'm glad that, again, Nick Jacobs came up with those numbers.
No, it was good. And then, I mean, we got to – I feel like I'm always a big picture guy. Take a step back and that, like, okay, with that left tackle situation, they still got to the Super Bowl this year. And probably the only reason they lost is because they ran into a team whose exact strength was your weakness.
Yeah.
Right? And had the Rams just finished off that game and beaten the Eagles, then I really like the Chiefs' chances of beating. Right? There's that whole other side of the bracket that had to result.
Doesn't snow in Philly that day.
I know,
to be
that
honest.
too. That had to result in that being the matchup. And, styles make fights in boxing and in the NFL. Despite that being a pure domination.
So, again, just wanted to bring that up. Thought it was interesting. We talked about the salary cap. That's a good thing, especially for guys who are currently under contract, because it goes up for every single team, right? So everyone's like, look at the cap went up. You can sign all these guys now. Oh, but what it basically means is
guys are asking for more now.
Yeah, Jamar Chase is going to ask for more, and now every team is in the bidding for these free agents. It helps more for guys that are currently under contract. Now you might not have to extend Joe Thuney, right? Because the cap hit of $27 million is no longer insurmountable. Just some interesting nuances when it comes to the salary cap.
An awful thing to do, by the way. Oh, man, I'm asking for the max, Oh, my employer's making more money now. And if I still ask for the same number, we could be better as a team? Nope, I'm going to raise my number. What an awful thing to do. But it's done all over the place.
Owners would never. They would never do that to players on the other side.
I mean, it's $35 million you're getting. And, I got to have 39 now, or I'm not respected. How dare these guys make more money and we can sift off more to other players on the team and be better?
Now, I will agree with you on I'm highest paid because they paid me 1 cent over
so out of our NFL cocktail parties we have every weekend, I can brag that I'm the highest paid now.
For 6 months until...
Well, Mick knows he goes to those. See, that was his deal.
That's right. We have those for
he had
TV.
At least 1 cent more than Kevin and Nick
are
Jacobs.
We seeing the same
guys?
thing happen in college ball now? By the way,
probably
checks are still cashing in Manhattan and Lawrence, but the wins aren't coming. Doesn't matter. Checks are still cashing.
I said it earlier. You got to in the pros. You pay people not just based off performance. It's also the culture and the things off the field that you pay these players for, hence why they do so much research during the draft.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, when guys are 25 and 30, money is still a motivating factor, right? Why does the contract year, right? It's always undefeated to where like, you're the money kind of softens you a little bit. It's not always
the Rocky.
And then so I can only imagine when you're 20 and having to deal with that to where like, do I really have to go and like try to out-rebound all these Mormons? Oh, I'm still getting $2 million.
Yeah, because Mick would hustle a whole bunch if he was getting paid $2 million.
Yeah, absolutely. At
19 years old.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. That was my game though. Was hustle. I had nothing else after that. But no, and yeah, you're right, and that's my point. I mean, if humans at 25, 30, and 35 struggle with that,
what about 48?
Doing it, 48 definitely would. I would be all at this point. It's all about the money. At 20, it's going to be even harder to be like, why if this is all guaranteed, why should I go out? Yeah, I'm giving 95%. Why should I give 100?
Well, Mick, thanks for being here for free for the rest of your career. Appreciate that. It's very nice of you. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. We're going to play Rotten Tomatoes. Bringing the game Rotten Tomatoes back. Mick, Dylan, and myself going to have some fun. We'll explain on the other side. The Zone. Sports Radio 810 WHB. Nick Schaefer. Gonna play a game called Rotten Tomatoes. So what this game is, we all have picked 3 movies. And we will go by and do the tomato meter, which is the critic score. And we will do the popcorn meter, which is the audience score. For example, I will do a test round so everyone knows how to play. Let's do Big Lebowski, because no one's going to do Big Lebowski because it's too obvious.
Because it's 100% for both, right?
It's not, but it should be. It's kind of BS, it's not. So, for example, I would say, all right, Big Lebowski, Mick, what is the critic score on this one?
I would say critic score 88.
Dylan.
I'll go 89.
So the answer is 80 for critic score.
Okay.
So Mick would get 1 point. Now, if he would have said 80 exactly, what does that mean? He gets 2 points.
I feel like if you hit it on the mark, you should get more than 2 points.
No,
maybe
because
5.
Well, because then if you get 5, you hit it right, the game's over.
It's over.
It's
okay.
over. So we got to at least keep it interesting, right?
3? Can I get 3?
2.5.
Okay.
2.5. And then I'd be like, okay, so Mick gets a point. Now the popcorn meter. What does the audience think about this?
I would say 91.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go 85.
93. So Mick would have gotten 2 points,
Yeah.
and Dylan would be in last place by a wide margin. That's how you play Rotten Tomatoes. Pretty easy, pretty simple. We'll find a winner, and you can always give the like if you don't know the movie or if you just want to, it'd be preferable to give the summary, which it says it on the Rotten Tomatoes website. For example, it'd be Jeff Bridges plays Jeff Lebowski, who insists on being called the Dude, a laid-back, easygoing burnout who happens to have the same name as a millionaire, yada, yada, yada. Okay?
Yep.
We know how to play?
Sure.
Okay. Dylan, you want to go first? I feel like Dylan never goes first.
Yeah.
You
Why
go
not?
first, Dylan.
I'll go Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Came out in 2005.
Let's go.
Runs 2 hours, 20 minutes.
Oh, I've never seen this.
Are you a Star Wars guy?
Big.
Can you give me the country of origin?
It was
America.
It's a country far, far away, I thought.
It's a galaxy far, far away. Hot start. What's the
What
rotten-
happened in this one? And the third one?
Darth Vader becomes Darth Vader. It's the prequels of the 4, 5, 6 that came out in the late 80s.
So when this one came out in 05. Oh, okay. So this is like a...
Yes.
So we're going audience first. Or we're going critics first.
Yes.
Critics first?
Yep. Tomato meter.
Is this when he, legs and arms are gone, lava, that one? Okay,
Yep. He's got the high ground.
Yep.
I'll say 92%.
For the critics?
Yeah.
Mick?
I'm going to go lower because I remember that was the third of them. It was after Clone Wars, right? So it had to be better than Clone Wars. That was 2. I'm going to say low. I'm going to say critics for 79.
Mick wins. It is 80%, so 79.
Wow.
Man, almost got that 2 ball.
Almost had it.
Almost got it.
All right, popcorn meter. I'll go Mick first this time.
Oh, yeah, Mick first. Okay.
Sure. Makes sense. It's going to be higher, I'm thinking. Although, I don't know, Star Wars fans, it was the 6th one that movie came out. They're going to be very judgy at this point. But again, rebounding off of Clone Wars, I'm going to go popcorn meter 84.
I will go 82.
Sterling is a winner because the percentage was 66.
Oh, they got really judgy,
They
didn't
got
they?
very, very if you would have been looking at me when you said that, I nodded very. I was trying to give you
Dang
guys
it.
both a hint.
Dang
but
it.
Yes.
All
It
right.
only got better with the newer ones that came out. So
1-1. Somehow I split on Star Wars. I don't know the Star Wars. very
1-1-0
well.
though, right?
Yeah, 1-1-0 technically.
Okay,
Yeah. All right, we'll go with Wayne's World 2.
All right, what happened to Wayne's World 2? Is that when he was in
Wayne's World 2, not 1 for those wondering. After Wayne Campbell has a dream in which Jim Morrison tells him to put on a rock concert, he and fellow late-night TV star Garth Algar try their hand at promoting. Several musical acts show little interest, leaving their pair uncertain about their ability to put on a successful show. Meanwhile, Cassandra. Wayne's rock star girlfriend has a new manager, who was Christopher Walken, who was trying to steal her away, and Wayne's antics only make things worse.
All right, so we're doing which one first?
We're doing the critics first.
Me go first?
We'll go Mick first, yes.
Critics. I'm going to go. Critics had this puppy at a 46.
Yeah. I'll go critics had it at a 35.
Mick wins. It was 60% shockingly.
wow.
The critics were fairly nice. 60%.
that's good.
On Wayne's World 2. Not a bad sequel, quite frankly. Dylan, you'll go first. What do you think the audience thought about Wayne's World 2?
Give me 65%.
So I don't know. I mean, I would figure audience is usually higher than critics, but then Star Wars didn't happen that way. I'll go. What was the critics? 60?
60, yeah.
I'll go 55% lower. I'll go 55% for the popcorn.
Dylan wins. Almost nailed it. 63%.
Oh, nice.
Wayne's World 2. Dylan on the board.
1 to 2, just because I've gotten to go twice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Congrats.
Thank you. My turn.
Your turn. I'll say it right now. At least someone's going to be tied with you after this one. I'll guarantee it.
One person will. Maybe have the lead. All right. Released in October of 1987, The Princess Bride.
Oh, yeah.
Fairy tale adventure about a beautiful young woman and her one true love. Starring Robin Wright Penn.
I'll go
Robin Wright at the time and Carrie Elwes.
87% for the critics. 87.
Okay.
Yeah, give me 85.
87 wins it because it's 96.
Wow.
Sterling takes that one. Critics loved it. All right. And over 250,000 ratings later, what's on the popcorn meter, Dylan?
What was the 93 or
96 for tomato meter.
Damn. I want to go higher, so I'm going to go 97% somehow, if that's even possible.
I will go 100%.
That doesn't seem possible. Does anybody have 100%?
Yeah, there's
Dylan wins that one, 94%.
Should have gone lower. We have a three-way tie. You guys.
2-2-2.
This is electric. Jason right now punching air, wishing
We're
he could
third
join.
of the way through, though,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Dylan, you're next.
All right. It is called like a bunch of S's.
What?
A snake sound. Yes. Is the name of this movie. It was released in 1973. Yeah,
Dylan.
I've seen it.
You've seen it.
Short on cash, undergrad David Blake takes a job working as a lab assistant for a snake expert, Dr. Carl Stoner. When Stoner begins giving David a series of antibiotics as a safeguard against snake bites, he at first thinks nothing of it, but gradually David begins noticing curious changes in his body.
It's like Spider-Man, but
And
with
his
a
new
snake.
girlfriend, Dr. Stoner's daughter, Christina, notices them too. Could Dr. Stoner really be trying to turn his assistant into a snake?
Could be.
Could be, probably. Oh, man.
Who's in this? Do I know anybody in it?
He's seen it before, so he...
No.
I don't know it. Okay.
Nope, unless you know Bernard L. Kowalski, Strother Martin, Dirk Benedict.
Oh, yeah, Dirk Benedict.
Oh, there you go.
We went to high school together.
Sure, that's the same one.
Yeah, I'm sure the same guy acted in a movie in 1973.
All right.
I'll go 33% for critics.
It's pretty low. I'll go 41% for critics.
Sterling wins. It was a even 30% on the tomato meter. And let me tell you, do not waste the hour and 30 minutes of your life that you'll never get back.
Well, when did you watch this and why?
Thanksgiving, my aunt has a lot of old movies, and we jokingly watched some bad ones, and this was the joke background noise where we're all laughing at just how it is. It is a bad movie.
Mick, what do you
So
think?
I'm up. I'll do for popcorn meter.
Yep. But it could be a cult classic.
Not exactly. I'm going to go a robust 32%.
I will go 36%.
Mick wins. It is
Lower.
not a cult classic. It had a 26% on the fan rating. So
Also, I feel like we shouldn't be able to go to 1%. I at least made
You were
it.
pretty close on that, but yeah.
But I'm
yeah.
not gonna go
I
one.
was trying to
Yeah.
find. I
So
thought
five,
for sure.
five either way.
Yeah, I
That
feel like that
lower.
feels fair. Yeah. All right, it is 3-2. We are in a barn burner here. At least we're all close. Better than the Super Bowl. Flubber. Professor Philip Bernard, who's experimenting with new kinds of energy, and he thinks this product is going to save the struggling Medfield College. He gets
Who's in
that
it?
he discovers a lively rubber-like substance named flubber.
Who's in it?
Robin Williams.
Oh, I don't know if I ever saw that.
Yeah, the
What year was it?
mischievous flubber seems to have a mind of its own. I remember watching this as a kid in 1997.
Huh. Never saw it.
Flubber.
Okay. That's yours, so I go first here.
Yeah, what are the critics?
Can't be good. I'm going to go 56% on the critics.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 40, even 40%.
Yeah, 24%.
Oh, my God.
Critics did not like Flubber.
It's the reason I haven't seen it.
I remember we got a projector screen one time, and we watched it outside as a kid, and I thought this was just a great movie. But I was also a dumb kid, so that might have played a factor.
Okay.
What did the audience think, though, of Flubber, Dylan? Could be a cult classic.
Yeah,
Could be.
and a children's movie, so maybe it is a little higher than that. I'm gonna go. I'll stick with 40. I'll go 40 again.
And what was the critics?
A 24.
I'm gonna say since you knew it slightly more, but not 40. I'll go 29.
Mick wins. It's 33.
Oh, barely.
By one. Mick with a commanding lead, 4-3-3. Just an absolute bloodbath, which is like Flubber. That's the premise. It's a kid movie. All right, Mick, let's go. We got to get through these.
Fletch. May 31st, 1985. Investigative reporter Irwin M. Fletcher, Chevy Chase, looks to solve a drug ring.
Who has the best steak sandwich in California?
Yeah, so Dylan, you're best. What's the tomato meter?
Give me 100%. Nah, give me 80% tomato meter.
Okay.
I'll go 85.
Ah, you were close. 79. Dylan almost got it.
Oh.
79%, which kind of surprised me. I figured they wouldn't have liked it that much. What's a good movie? Like 65%?
Ish, yeah.
70?
I'll go 85% for the audience one. I'm feeling 85 here.
That's a good guess. I'll do 86 just to be Price is Right.
We just said we couldn't do that. That's fine.
Five either way. It doesn't matter. You win.
What was it?
85.
It's 81.
Let's go.
81.
All right, guys. We're all tied at 4-4. This is just
riveting stuff.
Impressive. This normally doesn't go this way. Dylan, final movie. Let's go, baby.
Debut in 1983, Trading Places with
movie.
Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy.
I will go 92% for the critics.
So it's comedy. I feel like critics usually don't like comedies that much. I'm going to go lower than that. I'll go 85.
Sterling, you said 92?
Yeah.
Just barely beat Mick there. It was 89%.
Oh,
boom.
nice.
First one to get the little number across when you do
3% off,
numerals.
4% off.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, so for the audience, you go first.
Audience, what was it? Was 89?
89 was tomato meter.
I think audience is going to like it more at 93.
That's the number I wanted. I will go 98.
Oh, it's Mick. He had it's 85% popcorn.
Wow,
Okay.
surprising.
Yeah, I would have thought more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mick also with 5. All right, final one for me. Pootie Tang.
Give me a break.
Pootie Tang. Chris Rock show is where it was adopted from. Pootie Tang is the ultimate superhero.
It's like 3 of these movies I
A
haven't seen.
cool walking, smooth talking ladies man. He's a hero and a role model to all the kids in the neighborhood. Everyone looked up to Pootie, except evil Dick Lecter, which is Robert Vaughn. A lot of big names in this one.
When did this come out?
This came out in 2001. You had Wanda Sykes, Jennifer Coolidge, Chris Rock, J.B. Smoove, Dave Attell, Louis C.K.
Damn, that's a good cast.
It's a great cast. One of my favorite movies.
So
I'll go first
Is
on
it
a
really?
tomato. Tomato meter 60%.
Okay.
We were way off. So I won't hedge. I will go with what I was thinking. 38% on tomato meter.
Way too high, you guys. It's 27.
Yeah. Okay.
One of my favorite movies, Pootie Tang.
Your
Great
taste in movie Flubber and Pootie Tang.
It's a great movie. He fights crime with a belt, shockingly enough. popcorn meter, though. Could it be a cult classic?
What it was 27, you say?
27.
I'll go 30 for cult classic maybe.
Damn. Yeah, I'll go 35.
Way off. 63%.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Audience loved this movie. It was just it was a cult classic apparently. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. Taught
us so much, really.
You have to watch it once. Watch it one time, and you will you'll be surprised.
Never get that time back.
Some ways. It's my turn. Final one.
Final one. Right now, Mick is up 6. I have 5. Dylan has 5. One of us needs to win both or we have a push.
3-way tie.
Which has never happened in the history of Rotten Tomatoes game.
All right, Hoosiers come out in November of 1986. Greatest sports story ever told. Dylan, you'll go first on Tomato Meter.
I'm going to go 90%.
I'll go 85.
91, Dylan.
Wow, Dylan, that was
6.
so now Dylan can't lose.
Can't lose. You got to get this to tie.
Dylan, you can either win or tie.
Yeah. Here we go. Popcorn meter, you're up first, Sterling.
It was 91. I'm going to double down. 91. Oh, be the number.
I'm going to go 89.
For the win, if it's the same number.
88.
Dylan!
The
big brain on Dylan. Dylan, make sure you keep this. This is the put it on your fridge.
Art and Frame Warehouse.
You can go to Art and Frame Warehouse. Petro knows a guy.
Yep.
I feel like the movie is really what changed it.
I'm going to send it
the
to you
game
guys.
changer.
It's maybe Oscar worthy and just got completely overlooked.
I want to do this again because I'm not going to do like my favorite movies. I'll pull out some.
Well, I did my favorite movies.
Flubbers. Yeah, you did.
All right, we'll take a break, finish up, wrap up this Wednesday edition of The Zone, Sports Radio 810 WHB.